What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 225. We are officially down to the final 16 teams that'll make up and play for your national championship. 16 incredible teams, incredible storylines. We have got through the first weekend of the NCAA Tournament. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton, and joining me again today for the Sweet 16 episode of the podcast is my teammates Trevor Everett, Michael DeRosa. Gentlemen, we made it through the first 4 hectic days of the tournament, and now we are here. The Sweet 16 is set. We know the matchups. We know what the regions are shaping up to look like. Cinderella didn't come dancing this year, but we'll talk about it. I think that's okay for a one-off year. How are you guys doing on this fine Monday afternoon?
You know, Josh, I'm doing pretty well. Fun weekend of hoops. It all kind of blended together. I don't know what happened on what day. I don't know what games were on what day. I just know games happened. It was fun. Happy to be here. And yeah, you know, I'll bring that up later.
I thought I had something prepared, but honestly, it was really nice. Last year was chaotic, 1 year wedding anniversary and stuff. And so with it being on Tuesday of this week, it was kind of fun to kind of have that in the middle of the week, do something championship Friday, Saturday of the conference championships. Because let's be honest, those don't matter. So other than if your team's there, right? Let's just all be real for a moment. And so it was really nice to get dived in, do 4 straight podcasts. And then once that was it, once it was 12:14 Eastern on Thursday, I was like I'm here, I'm good. And so if my current employer is watching, no, I was absolutely working the entire time. So, but no, it's just really fun to really enjoy it and just be in it. I kind of forgot how once the Thursday and Friday ended, I forgot how real and how sped up it feels. You really do feel like, oh my God, that middle of the day Sunday, you go, yeah, okay. When we're done today, there's 16 teams left. There was 64 48 hours before that. When that sets in for me, there's a moment somewhere either late Saturday or midday Sunday every year where it just kind of sets in and I go, how did we get here this quickly? It's like a funnel and you're like, okay, it's over.
Yeah. Well, to that point too, I had this thought last night watching Michigan State and New Mexico. We're almost at the end of the first weekend of things. We've almost got our Sweet 16 set, and I'm exhausted. Because you think about it, you're putting a lot of games, especially those Thursday, Friday games, where it is, like you mentioned, 12:14, 12:15, all the way until past midnight where you're watching games. And then Saturday, Sunday's a little more spread out with 8 games as opposed to 16. But that's a lot of basketball in a very, very short amount of time. And it's kind of by the time you end Sunday, you're like, whew, all right, let's catch our breath for a few days here before we turn her over and get to some real big games on the next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's a whirlwind every single time. But before we get into all the tournament stuff, we did have, transfer portal officially open today. As of right now, the last official word that we got, there's over 500 student athletes, basketball players in the transfer portal. That thing's going to balloon. I think last year we ended up getting 5,000 or some just an insane number. I want to talk about the portal real quick, and then there was a couple coaching hires, and then we'll get into the tournament. The portal, we know what it is. We know what it is. I just have such an issue with it starting this early. I think that it should be pushed back. I know they can't necessarily probably wait until the end of the year, but you could push it back another week. Start at the Final Four weekend, right? Because now you're starting it today, and you have 16 teams that are trying to play for a national title that have to worry about their travel, worry about game planning, worry about scouting, worry about trying to win and move forward towards the Final Four. Oh, and by the way, we've got to try to hit the portal here and look at scouting tapes and make phone calls and have people come out. And it's a lot going on. I wish they would push the start of the portal back an extra week at the very least. I think it would help a lot of people. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
I'm only pushing back on the Final Four during thing is because coaches have so much to do.
Okay, start it after then, maybe.
Yeah, I understand, without knowing any of the academic, and I can inquire about that. I've got some folks I can talk to about the academic timeline of it and when you have to be enrolled. But you can be enrolled in summer school, you can be enrolled in the next fall. I think there's some timeline there that there's no reason it shouldn't be after, is my point, at least based on knowing what we know about the academic process. Maybe Mike can shine some light on this as the most recent college student. But before you do, my point being is there's so much and Coach Barrett can attest to this, as I think I brought it up to him on a pod one time, being the host. They were one of the host cities at the Final Four I was at 2 years ago. Yeah. And I was just there, quote unquote, as a fan, but I know how much, and I know some folks in the media that were there for the first time or there for 10th time, whatever. And I know how much is involved in that process. And like, just there's constantly something going on, and head coaches have these meetings. Silver Wave Media does their big thing with all the assistants. There's so much going on. Can you imagine adding, oh, by the way, you have to recruit and portal and all that, which constantly happens anyway. But while they're actively there all in one place, it just feels really convoluted. It feels like there could be just too much of a melting pot there that I don't know if that necessarily would work during Final Four, but it has to be immediately after. Like, it just, that's the answer to me.
No, I think it's a fair point. I didn't even think about the Final Four thing. So just push it back after, guys. It's an extra 2 weeks. These kids who are, Michael, they already know they're going to the portal. Why put added stress on? Especially, I just think it's unfair to these teams who have worked so hard to get to the Sweet 16, and now their coaches have got to think about all the stuff I've laid out. Just push it back an extra 2 weeks. I don't see why it would hurt that much.
Yeah, the Final Four week, to Trevor's point, is like the big week for like coaches talking to each other, getting assistants and all that stuff. But guys, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to punch back a bit here. I don't think it makes a difference if we move it back or not. Tampering's a thing.
It's real.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a real thing, yeah.
Let's be real. Josh, your Kentucky Wildcats, they're in the Sweet 16, correct?
They are.
You think they're not talking to any recruits before the season ended?
Look, I mean, so here's the thing, too. It's never.
You think John Calipari ain't tampering right now?
Right.
He tried to act like, by the way, this is lunacy. Let's address this right now. He tried to act like he didn't know when the portal opened the other day in that press conference. I wanted to throw my phone across the room.
Cal's always acted like, oh, I don't know who we play next. I don't know what time we play next. So him saying he doesn't know when the portal opens.
Now, on the game part of it, I've been around enough coaches the last 2 years and learned that's a real thing. Not knowing who they play and what time, that's a real thing. Every assistant knows the date and time. But those head coaches, they are so focused on that one singular game. Like I've gotten just chewed out before about asking too many questions about the next game. And I just don't even do it anymore. I'm just sick of it. Like, I don't.
DeRosa, to your point though about tampering, of course it happens. Like they'll tell you though, like the coaches and stuff to kind of keep their nose out of the water for the most part. They're not saying anything, but they've got people like unofficial people making contact. Like Kentucky, what was it last week? It came out that the Eagle staff kid from North Dakota was going to enter the portal, and immediately, like 2 days later, it's like, oh, well, he's got an interview with talking about Kentucky, and it was a dream school, and this, that, and the other. And so reports came out that he seems to be heading that way. So yes, of course, tampering happens. Of course.
That's the thing. Like, if we move the portal back, we're just going to add more tampering. If you can stop tampering, then move it back, then I'm for it, right? Just by all means. But that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So I honestly don't think it makes a difference. I think the only difference it makes is optically. So if we want better optics, I agree with you guys. Like, broadly speaking, I agree with you guys. I would like the portal to open after the season, but I don't think it makes a difference. I really don't.
See, I love this counterpoint. I love this. I love that we can have differing views on different things, because I think it's good for the viewer and the listener to have the differing opinions on things like this. Plus, it just talks about the broader issue. I think we can all agree, though, the portal is out of control. Like, it is out of control. And I'd like to see something, and I don't have the answers. I'm not smart enough. I don't know what it is to reel in some, but there's got to be a way.
To your optics point, though, I care about the optics of college basketball. I want the impression of this league from a let's call it outsider perspective, someone who doesn't necessarily watch it all the time. I think those people are valuable to the sport. Yeah. And so if they're easier to follow, and guys, let's be honest, I follow it more than I ever have this year, with the Columbia stuff I talked about before we started the pod and other things. It's kind of nauseating trying to keep up. Like, I honestly have more notes on like the coaching portal and search right now than I do my notes about the Final Four and Sweet 16 and stuff like that, or round of 32 and Sweet 16. But I also watch that stuff. I absorb it. I'm better at taking less notes now. But the point being is I shouldn't have more notes on coaches' moves and potential things and sources and rumors. That should not be more of my priority right now. The day after the Sweet 16 was locked in is my point. And to the optics point, really quick, it's just in general, it's just easier to follow. It's easier to follow. It's easier to understand. You're not going to prevent tampering. The NBA has made that clear. They fined the Bucks a slap on the wrist in a second-round pick a few years ago. There's one other instance. I think the Bulls lost a first-round pick, if I believe, a few years ago as well. Like, that's pretty much it. And we haven't heard from tampering in the NBA ever again. But guess what? I can assure you on good faith that it happens every single day, and it might be worse.
Yeah. And the other point, too, again, this may not help at all, but I'm just trying to process this out. If we made an official start to the portal where it opens the first day of the season, so you have the championship game on Monday, portal opens the very next day on Tuesday.
I'm cool with it.
Maybe it stops some of these coaches feeling like, I've got like Jai Lucas, maybe he doesn't leave Duke right away. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he can let this run play out and then be like, boom, as soon as season's over, I'm gone. But he was in panic and be like, oh, shit, I got to go to Miami right now and get started and leave a team that could win a national title. Maybe that stops some of that as well.
I thought more about that. I thought more about the Jai thing as it's kind of transpired. He was kind of the first of the he really was the first dominant.
He was.
And he's also the only guy that I know of that's left early that was still quote unquote in play. And so, granted, guys like Ben McCollum, Sean Miller, all that, they've taken the job like 24 minutes after they got eliminated. That's different. But there's not many assistants that I know of. If there's a few. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to, let you finish your point, then I'll make a counter.
Well, he's kind of the exception to the rule right now of guys like leaving in the middle. They're already doing that stuff. They're already contacting people. Like you were saying, there's no stopping it. And so like him leaving, yeah, you want to prevent that because that really sucks for him. That really sucks for Duke. That really sucks for the opportunity. Like he technically didn't win the national championship if he's not on the roster at the end of it. It's kind of like there's a lot of weird stuff there, but like all that's irrelevant. The point being is he kind of the further and further we got away from the beginning of the cycle, he's kind of the exception to the rule. So a lot of these guys are sticking it. Florida has two guys that are current sitting coaches in two different leagues, and they're going to wait it out to try to win a national championship, and I respect that.
Yeah. I would say the one difference with Lucas compared to a lot of these other coaches like Miller, McCollum, is those guys are going to bring over some of their guys, right? Jai Lucas doesn't have the luxury of doing that.
That's true. That's a good point.
That would be the difference.
He could do that, but we're going to leave that alone for now because
if that happens, that would be really funny.
Technically, he could.
Let's bring out that real quick. You guys keep alluding. Obviously, we know because we follow the sport, but for those who don't know, Sean Miller is set to become the new head coach of Texas. Texas officially, what we've all talked about it for a long time. They let go of Rodney Terry shortly following their tournament exit to Xavier, ironically, in the NCAA tournament in Dayton. So Sean Miller will leave Xavier to head to Texas. From a coaching standpoint, look, he's a really good coach. We know what type of coach he is. I think he'll be good for Texas. I can't wait to hear DeRozan. And then the other one, Ben McCollum, we all expected his name was going to be a big name this year, following what he's done on the D2 level, following what he's done at Drake this year. They win a first-round game we'll talk about here soon. Then they get bounced by Texas Tech. He is taking over Iowa, who let go of Fran McCaffrey. The wheel is always spinning. We're still waiting on West Virginia to make a move because I think from the last time we talked, Darian DeVries is now the head coach of Indiana, who was West Virginia's coach. This whole thing is madness. We have, in the last week alone, had multiple head coaching hires at the high major level. DeRosa, I will let you. I know you've got thoughts on these. Take the floor.
I'm going to save my my Miller thoughts for the Road podcast that we're doing later. So I will apologize there, especially because there's
for those that might be new to House of College Hoops or everything college basketball. That is Road to the Garden. You've probably heard of that before you've heard of anything else because it's been around a while. Just wanted to make sure I included that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm going to save that there because there is a very slight, but I guess possible chance that either a Coach Miller or Coach Para is listening to this. And I'm not going to say very nice things about Coach Miller because I'm not the biggest fan of his. That said, very much respect him for coming on the show. And I that definitely raised my impression of Coach Miller a little bit, albeit not very much. McCollum, sharp dude, very good hire. That was a layup. DeVries, imagine if Indiana hired Brad Brownell, who was very rumored for that job. And then Indiana fans had to watch them get dog walked by McNeese.
That's it.
That would have been one of the best days on the
we didn't even talk. Sorry, that brings up we didn't even talk Will Wade to North Carolina State, the big one as well.
Okay, I'm gonna give a last take before I let you guys speak, and I will shut up for the next couple minutes. I think Will Wade's a very overrated head coach. I think that's a mediocre hire at best.
Look, I'll respectfully disagree on that. I think, look, he's won everywhere. Like, when's the last time LSU's had a winning year? It was under Will Wade. Huh? Come on, you know what I mean by winning. Like making the NCAA tournament, being competitive, being like legit again. They haven't been that since Will Wade was there. His last year
because Will Wade had so many allegations that kind of ruined the program and set them back for 4 years.
But both things can be true. Let's be abundantly clear about that. Both things can be true. That he did that, but he also is a great coach, and all the like the argument you're constantly going to hear is that all the stuff he was doing is now legal, and like for people to use that against him. I know you're not doing that in this instance. At least that's not the vibe I'm getting. Like we just addressed the portal and all the stuff that is all kind of convoluted in the legality. He's a really good coach. Like guys really enjoy playing for him. That's something that watch McNeese the last 2 years and tell me those guys don't love playing for that guy. Granted, they're probably getting more money in McNeese than they would have gotten any other job of that level around anywhere, right? Like I get that part of it, but those guys clearly like the emotion and there was just a lot. I know that team really loved him, and I just think that there's just something about him. I think the charismatic nature of just appearing publicly, kissing babies, shaking hands, like. Wolfpack Nation wanted him for a reason like that. There's a real buy-in to just like the publicity of like the wherewithal of understanding our program and where it is. He understood LSU was kind of a doormat for a while. He got there. They weren't a doormat anymore. They're back to a doormat again. Whether that's because of him before or after is fine. But the point being is I think he understands how a program needs to be built, run, operated, executed. And for that to happen as quickly as it does, that's the part that I have to respect him on. I don't know if we have anything else on this, but just, there's a lot going on. That was kind of my 2 cents on Wade. Y'all know how I feel about it. I've been privately talking about it. I try to keep my fandom out of it as best I can, but like I've wanted him for months. And the fact that at one point I was really believing that it wasn't going to be him. And then supposedly burner verse and all this other stuff was like a real reason. It sounds like that he kind of came through like whatever. I can't wait for those tell all stories in 10 years. Hopefully 15 or 20 when he's still around. But though, just the one thing on McCollum, I wish I could credit the original source on this, but everything I understand about that situation, read, heard, whatever on what was reported is it sounds like that he didn't take it lightly. Sounds like he actually really thought about the fact that he was going to stay at Drake. And it came down to like the final phone call at the end, kind of like, okay, I finally like told the AD, let me sleep on it kind of thing. There's no bad blood. From what I can understand, they're parting ways very comfortably. They understand they've made 3 incredible hires in that tenure. Like they're going to be fine. Like it's straight. Granted, 31 wins, whatever. It's just really funny to see Iowa go from like one of the fastest teams the last 15 years to like the literal slowest team. It's kind of funny. I just can't wait to see that. And people just like who are casual are going to watch the Big Ten and be very confused for a couple of months. I have one other thing that's not related to coaching before we jump out. I know it's been 20 minutes. It's a quick opinion I'd like from everyone.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was just going to say real quick on Will Wade, like what a better time to come into North Carolina State, right? You're wanted there. The ACC is down because look, you've got Duke to compete with. You got North Carolina. You got to think they'll eventually be back up, and you got Louisville. Outside of that, the conference is not looking good on the horizon. So you can immediately come in, compete. He can build a roster, build a program, and he can win basketball games. I think from strictly on court and what you will see product wise as far as number of wins, consistency, his tenure at North Carolina State, no matter how long that may be, North Carolina State will be in the mix every year from here on out. And I think it's a perfect time to make the jump. I do. I think that's a great hire from North Carolina State.
I think you guys, understand this better just from how much I know you appreciate the history and understand the game. But I'll just say this for those that may, and maybe you too, this is a nice lesson as well. Name me the last coach at NC State that wasn't afraid of being in the Dean Dome and Cameron Indoor and having a red suit on and FUing everyone around him. Name the last one that was like that.
Mark Godfrey.
No, that was not Mark. Yeah, okay. I mean, maybe you believe that.
But... No. Oh, God.
The answer is Norm Sloan in the 70s. That's the last person that's actually not afraid of the conference and of the people around him. That's what I'm excited about with Will Wade. I'm excited for the full red suit, standing in the Dean Dome up 25 and still yelling at his guys to beat him by 35. I'm excited about
fun,
that.
man.
That's really what I'm excited about.
You
He's
should
not
be.
afraid.
Yeah, you should be excited. It's a fun hire, and because you know what he brings, and I think that's fun. What is it that you have? You said you had one more point before we move on. Go ahead.
They've also tripled their season tickets in the last 5 years.
Well, they should.
In the last
there should be a lot of excitement.
Just figure I'd throw that out there. I've gotten the email 3 times. So, where are we on the aura guy?
Oh my God.
Can we just talk about it for 15 seconds? Like,
yep, go ahead.
I love it. I think it's great. I think we kind of need it this year because of the lack of upsets, and the lack of buzzer beaters, and the lack of close games. And I love it. I think it's fine. I just think people are bored and they don't know what to not like about March Madness. And typically there's actually a lack of hatred for March Madness every year. So this is kind of a weird, almost one-off thing. Obviously it got blown up, the NIL deals. I think there's a lot there. I think it's great. I think he's funny. I think the whole situation with Wade kind of elevates it even more. But there's people saying stupid, nasty things about it, and I just just enjoy the fun. I just think it's fun.
I don't agree with the nastiness. I thought originally this is the problem that I guess you could go into a deeper discussion with corporate America, or how once big conglomerations get a hold of stuff, it kind of ruins the aura. No pun intended. The aura of it. It was awesome when they showed it was a conference, the Southland tournament, when they first became public about it and started really getting some buzz on Twitter. And it was fun. And you're happy for the dude because he's happy and he's got the boombox. I think it's great for him. Dude, the first manager to get NIL deals, I think it's great. I don't like the fact now that big time media like CBS and them has got it and they've overdone it. I'm like, that's the part. If you kept it in moderation, it's awesome. And I still think he's awesome, and I'm really happy for him. But it's as soon as a big corporation gets their hands on it, it overexposes, and I think maybe that's where some of the people's kind of angst comes from. But I don't agree with being mad at the dude. What's he supposed to do? What's he supposed to do? This is great for him. He probably never thought that, hey, I'm about to be in the spotlight and get $100,000 worth of NIL. I think it's great for him. I think people that are being mean about it are stupid. But I do think they overexposed it a little bit, and I wish maybe it'd pull back a little bit.
I echo every single word Josh said. The only thing I will add is interviewing him instead of interviewing the players after the game is really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Other than that, I agree with I don't blame the kid. It's not the kid's fault. I agree with every single word Josh said.
Yeah. I just was curious, where y'all landed on the discourse. Oh, look here, this is perfect. When Topps gives you your own trading card, you lose all your. I would argue that that's not true because Topps is still the number one card thing in the world, and so the fact that he got it, I think that actually ignites it. But I get your point. So
yeah, no, I think it's great for him, man. I mean, look. He's a manager, and we're
talking about it on a relatively big podcast in college basketball. A top 50 one according to that email we got today. Pretty sick. Mm-hmm. I wish I had the thing in front of me to tell you what it actually said.
A million podcasts.
Yep. Top 50 according to today. That was pretty sick. And we're talking about it at the 23-minute mark, and we haven't talked about the Sweet 16 once, and we've talked about Amir Khan first. That's working. It's real.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Trevor, for that.
But it just
he created his argument, then he made his argument.
No, I really wasn't going to bring it up until I saw all the nasty stuff. I was just what are we doing?
Yeah, it was just look. Those are people who are just miserable at everything, and they don't like the fact that this kid gets all these NIL deals, and they're probably grinding away for $15 an hour. I think that's where it's coming from. We're not mad at the kid. We're happy for the kid. We're mad at the big conglomerations who have overexposed it and kind of force-fed it down our throat when it was a natural movement, I think is where it comes from. Let's get into the tournament finally, shall we? Let's get into the tournament. Look, the big thing around this tournament, we kind of alluded to at the beginning. People, not everybody, but there are a segment of kind of casual fans who really love the NCAA tournament for betting, for brackets, for all that just associate every year with, the Cinderellas. We get the 12 over the 5, and maybe we'll get lucky in a 14 or 15, or even the twice it's ever happened, but maybe we'll get that 16 seed, and maybe one of these underdogs can make a run and we can really hitch a ride into them. And it didn't happen. And I think that's okay for 1 year, because if you remember, it wasn't that long ago where we had San Diego State in the national title game. We had FAU in the Final Four. 1 year, and especially this year where the SEC has been so dominant. We've had Auburn and Duke. All the 1 seeds are still alive because those were the 4 best teams in college basketball. You look at all the other seeds. Michigan State, great this year. Alabama, great. Other teams. Arkansas struggled, but always had a great roster. Kentucky, Tennessee, all these teams had ups and downs, but were really good. Guys, I think for 1 year, when you look at the tournament being pretty chalky, it's okay, because now we are set up for great Sweet 16 games and beyond, because these are the best teams in college basketball. What do you guys think about the lack of quote-unquote Cinderella this year?
Round 2 ruled. I hope we get more good games. Some of the games in round 2 were awesome. Round 1 wasn't the greatest. Round 2 ruled. If the Sweet 16 rules and the Elite 8 rules, you're not going to see me complaining. So just we'll see if those games are good. But broadly speaking, I want to make a general point. I saw on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith said something. I don't remember what the headline was. I just saw his face and I kept scrolling. But it was this could be ruin college basketball or whatever.
Oh my God.
College basketball has died 1,000 times. It really hasn't.
We're like the Undertaker, baby. We just keep coming back.
Exactly. And broadly speaking, Seth Davis gives a lot of takes I disagree with. His take on expansion, I think I wholeheartedly disagree with it. There are other takes he has that I wholeheartedly disagree with.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect his opinion because he covers our sport every day.
And has for long enough that I can understand he's built up enough of a reason to feel that way.
Exactly. Yeah. He has earned whatever take he has. We know it is backed up based on a ton of work in the sport. So I respect whatever he says, no matter what, even if I personally disagree with it. I don't give a flying fuck what Stephen A. Smith has to say, or these talking heads who don't talk about our sport.
It's just casual, man.
I have the quote if you would like.
Yeah, go ahead. Pull it up.
Context. On 3 posted it. Shocker. Stephen A. Smith, and of course the graphic says death, and just him really sad looking. Love the On 3 graphics. I actually think they're doing some of the best ones in the game right now. Stephen A. Smith on no Cinderella teams in this year's Sweet 16. Of course, it was probably a 5 to 8 minute monologue, but just you get the point. Quote: "If this continues, it will be the death of college basketball." End quote. That was it. That's all they posted. Which I have a point about when you're done, but
Yeah. Do you remember with the old John Ross? I don't know if he still does it. The old John Rothsteinism of
somebody like that.
West Virginia basketball tougher than a long weekend at your in-law.
Yep.
John Rothstein cares more about his in-laws than Stephen A. Smith cares about college basketball. And you expect me to really give a shit what he says?
That's a really good analogy.
Look, why? Honestly, as a whole, all those dudes, Stephen A. can be entertaining at times. Shannon Sharp, great when he talks NFL. Don't give a shit when he talks about any other sport because he doesn't know what he's talking about. You're talking about a company that, and during the heart of college basketball season, we had those great Saturdays in January and in December when you had 7 top 25 games. They didn't cover the sport once. They cared too much about the Dallas freaking Cowboys, who were not a playoff team. But now, because we're in the tournament, they're like, that's the death of the sport. It's the death of the sport. Get off. It's 1 year, guys. Remember what I just said. 2 years ago, Trevor, you were there in person. You saw San Diego State and FAU, 2 mid-majors in the Final Four in an upset-ridden tournament where the top 3 seeds from every region did not advance past those Sweet 16.
And people called that the death of college basketball, by the way. And they went at each other in the Final Four to a close game to the end, and San Diego State hit a buzzer beater. It was one of the greatest moments in the Final Four history.
So it's 1 year where we have the best teams in college basketball finally getting to play and lock horns in these incredible games instead of being like, oh my God, I can't wait for Auburn and Michigan, talking about the matchups, or I can't wait for Kentucky, Tennessee part 3, or whatever game you want to pick. There's incredible games throughout the Sweet 16. Mm-hmm. It's, oh, well, we didn't get a Cinderella. McNeese didn't make it to the Sweet 16. Oh my God, Liberty should have beat Oregon, and then they would beat Arizona, and then we could have this Cinderella of Liberty against Duke. We've got great college basketball games coming up this week and beyond, and you're talking about, oh my God, Cinderella. It's 1 year. 1 year.
the whole point that I'd like to make, to be abundantly clear, is like, again, target audience of March Madness, generally speaking, is a casual fan.
Mhm.
You would consider Stephen A. Smith. So like these takes, he has the platform for it to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Reach a broader
tripled.
audience.
Yeah, tripled or whatever word I'm trying to use. The one thing I'll say though is the complete easy one-line refute, and we can move on, that I think refutes his entire point, or anybody's entire point, about the death of college basketball, specifically to the lack of, because it's specifically tied to the lack of Cinderellas. The only time it's really ever happened where there's a true lack of Cinderellas was 2008.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. If college basketball didn't die in 2008, when it had the 4 of the best teams to ever make the Final Four at that time, currently, now this year, 4 of the 6 teams, best team ever in Ken Palm are here, for crying out loud. Like, okay, if that didn't kill college basketball that year when we all thought that, which no one did, then nothing will. Like, it happened then. It was incredible. And by the way, it was an incredible Final Four. And guess what? We all look back on that really fondly because of revisionist history. So the point being is, they're really awesome. Cinderellas are great. I love them. I cover most of them, in this area. I think, I try to find them, whatever. I think they're awesome. I picked High Point to make the Sweet 16, for crying out loud. And honestly, at this point, I think Purdue might be able to make the Elite Eight. And I've totally flipped that. I'm allowed to change that opinion because we're allowed to adapt and absorb what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, I don't think we should. And now, to his point, he can react how he wants, but it's just completely wrong.
Amen. And the other thing too, you guys want to know why there's probably not so many Cinderellas? How about the Cinderella teams shot like 29 or 30% from the 3-point line in their upset bids? Why? Well, maybe, they just had bad shooting nights, but the balls, there is an epidemic in the NCAA tournament with the overinflated basketballs. It's been like that for years, but for some reason this year feels worse. You listen to great shooters like Kobe Bryant. You will not find a better shooter in college basketball than Kobe Bryant. Talks about after game 1 against Troy, I had to readjust my shot. How about when VJ Edgecombe goes to dunk a ball in Mississippi State and the ball hits the rim and flies in the air all the way to the other end of the floor? You don't think the balls are that inflated? If people who play basketball know what I'm talking about, when you have a hard basketball that's overinflated, it is like a rock you are trying to shoot. Maybe if the NCAA would stop overinflating these new basketballs, keep them a normal PSI, your mid-majors, Cinderellas, would shoot better. And if they make threes, that's their key to upsets. The fact that they only shot like 30% this year is the reason why there is no upsets.
I totally forgot to mention at the end of my last point, by the way, that the ratings were the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
Literally. They were the highest in tournament history. So that refutes all of what we talked about.
Yeah.
I'm ready to talk about the games.
Yeah. Same here.
Let's go with it. So first round, okay, we've got on the point. No real upsets here as far as Cinderellas go. Anything from the first round catch your eye? I thought in the first round, very first game of the tournament, Creighton, the way they shot the basketball in Rupp Arena, and I know we spent all this time talking about not shooting, but there still was some incredible shot making in this tournament so far. The way Creighton came out and tuck it to Louisville and basically a true road game, hitting all those threes, could not miss. Michael, I thought Creighton after the first round was one of the big winners of the tournament through the first day of the tournament. They looked incredible against Louisville.
And they played a very good first half against Auburn too. I thought they were excellent. The guard play to me really stood out. Bennett Sturtz was masterful in that game against Missouri. He was flawless. Everything you could have done to control that game against a team that wanted to speed you up, he was in control. He was hitting tough shots. He was making the extra pass. He was flawless. If you are a kid growing up playing point guard, watch Bennett Sturtz in that game and you will learn a ton. He was flawless. I think that honestly was the best performance I've seen of anybody in the tournament. He was excellent through 2 games. He was flawless. Braden Smith, I thought, was excellent in the High Point game too. And I'm not going to lie, when the McNeese game was a blowout, I kind of tuned out. But in the High Point game, I thought Braden Smith, also his control of that game was flawless. He was excellent. I thought the guards were great. I thought Nate Clifford looked like an NBA player through 2 games. I think he showed you why he's a first-round pick. I think he should be. But Bennett Sturtz, Braden Smith, I thought were truly flawless. Bennett Sturtz to me is the standout to me. If we are making like an all first round team, all first weekend team, Bennett Sturtz would be my starting point guard. He was masterful.
I thought he was great. Trevor, in your neck of the woods, stayed up late. It was one of the last games on Thursday, if I remember right, or maybe it was Friday. I forget. But Texas Tech got a scare for a while against UNC Wilmington. I thought Wilmington gave one hell of a performance in that game. Donovan Newby was awesome in that game. Only 8 points, but he made some big plays. Nolan Hodge, though, 18 points. Got cooking there for a while. Really thought Wilmington was going to pull off the upset. Talking about Cinderellas of a 14. Didn't come to pass. Texas Tech started making shots and was able to pull away. But I thought UNC Wilmington gave one hell of an accounting for themselves, even in a 10-point loss.
I'll just say this. If your original question, if I remember correctly, Tedrosa was like your biggest like surprises, or was it just biggest like
just overall thoughts kind of in first round?
Because biggest surprises, that would not be on my biggest surprises list at all. You guys know that.
Just standouts first round.
I just want to take a victory lap on Nolan Hodge. I hope that kid sticks around for much longer. I tweeted it during the Delaware game, their last regular season game I was at. It was one of the 2 under 8 timeouts. I believe it was the first one. And I said, bookmark this tweet. In DC, he will have a game that wakes the league up or gets the league's attention. And then I quote tweeted it during the Texas Tech second half. And I said, just kidding. I was referring to the NCAA tournament. I didn't think he'd have a game like that.
You were off a couple of games. So
hey, the fact they got there, the fact he did it, hey, a victory lap regardless. Anyway, biggest just overall takeaways. I honestly was surprised Clemson got mollywopped the way they did.
Dude,
I know
they
came back, and I know the resort. I know the final result says 69-67. McNeese, very uncharacteristic of Will Wade, who we've already talked about for long enough, but very uncharacteristic of the fact that they tried to play to do what? To try to not lose instead of try to win. And teams do that all the time in the NCAA tournament. Most of the time you do that, you lose. And so the fact that they didn't just shows you how good that team is, of course. They kept Purdue close as well. I know this, again, but some of these final scores, like that's what's so deceiving to me about just recapping this is like, I'm going to have more fun with previewing because all these games, even if they quote unquote were good, the final result doesn't lead you, at least the score or whatever, doesn't lead you to believe that a lot of these games were close and just you really had to be watching them. And so I guess to answer your question, just overall takeaways, surprises, whatever. I can't believe the Clemson got beat the way they did. I know Dylan Hunter wasn't there. I hammered that point over both of your heads for 2.5 weeks, but it just surprised me because stylistically, I didn't think they weren't going to be that at a disadvantage. I really don't. I actually think they had the advantage, and they just got their break speed. Like it just floored me. I was surprised. So.
The only other takes I would have, we're going to talk about Florida and Maryland later, correct?
Yes,
yes sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've takes on those 2 teams, but we'll save those.
The other couple things from the first round. I mean, when I look up, I was watching another game. I can't remember. I look up in a blink of an eye, Gonzaga had Georgia down 24-3. And I thought, oh my God. It's crazy because, look, I thought Georgia was deserving of a tournament spot. They were. I thought that they would give them problems. We even talked about it last Monday preview, and I said, man, watch out. Dude, Gonzaga just stomped them out. So that woke me up. How about Robert Morris? Only getting beat by Alabama in a 215 by 9 points. 90-81 and had the lead. They had Alabama on the ropes. Alabama had them down double digits. Robert Morris goes on an insane 13-1 run to take the lead. Alabama immediately grabs it back, and then you could see Robert Morris started to run out of steam. I'm telling you right now, I've seen Tide fans on Twitter. Those buttholes were puckered a little bit now. They were nervous.
He didn't want to have to play Grant Nelson at all that game.
And he had to. He had to.
I thought that post game was very revealing. I'm glad Mike brought that. Did you hear it? Did you hear his quote verbatim?
Oh, I did, yeah.
They asked him, DeRosa, did you?
No.
Okay, so he basically, I'm paraphrasing from what felt like a month ago, but it was, 4 days ago. Yeah, my wife was talking to me. I was like, hold on. I was like, he's talking about Grant Nelson right now. We got to figure out what the heck just happened. He said something to the effect of what helped you get it done or something. They kind of alluded to Grant, but didn't ask him. And he was like, he can't, when he's telling me he's ready to go, kind of it was very clear that he literally did not want to do it. And they had him in the back pocket and they felt like they were going to be on the end of that rope and lose the game. I'll post the actual quote.
Look, Robert Morris had him with 6 minutes to go. It was tight. You started to kind of feel some rumbles from the crowd, and then Robert Morris just kind of ran out of steam. So I thought Robert Morris, that's one of those occasions we've talked about a lot over the years where you lose a game, but you kind of get over. Like, people walked away seeing Robert Morris, who's the Horizon League regular season and tournament champions, in a different light. Like, wow, congrats. You have to stand up, give them a standing applause. Tell me what you guys think. The two biggest winners, in my opinion, of this first week in the NCAA tournament, both come from the SEC. Ole Miss, what they did to North Carolina and what they turned around yesterday and did to Iowa State. Ole Miss and Chris Beard, they've got an absolute wagon going right now. We've known how good they've been all year. They've been a little fluctuating up and down with the offense, but they put to bed two very competitive teams, two teams that could have easily beaten them, and they mollywopped both of them. And the other team, look, we'll talk about them in the Sweet 16, but I don't think anybody had a bigger weekend than John Calipari in Arkansas. He takes down Bill Self and he takes down Rick Pitino to make a Sweet 16 after me included. I'm the biggest one, and I'll fully admit it. Said he was washed. He couldn't do it. Look, the last month of the year, he's done an incredible coaching job, and he's got Arkansas in the Sweet 16. I don't think anybody had a bigger first weekend than John Calipari.
I disagree. I'd say he's second. I'd say the number one is Kevin Willard. Willard.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot more tied to that as well, but I'll leave that alone.
Oh, we all know the stories there.
He goes an extra night in New York City. Yeah, I want to come back to Maryland, but I don't know if I will. My AD's taking the job at SMU, so I have no idea what's going on. I don't really care. It's what? That was weird. Then they win the first round game. They look good in the first round.
Just so you know, Colorado State wins that game, and we're talking about this a whole lot differently.
Exactly. The buzzer beater. Everyone in the country is watching as your star freshman, who, by the way, is another big winner. He secured himself a lot.
Love that kid.
Love
that kid.
So good. So good. But Willard just goes from he took Maryland to their first Sweet 16 in 20 some odd years because of that shot. Yeah, I think the biggest winner is Kevin Willard, and that man is about to get paid by whoever. Someone is going to pay him a lot of money. I don't think anybody won more than Kevin Willard did.
I think keeping the money into account, I think DeRosa's right. But I'll just say this, Calipari, whether we get into it now, I think this makes sense now more than later. But his whole season changed when they won at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was it. Yep. That was the switch that flipped. Look at them from that game on. Even they had some slips. They were still a bubble team. Then they kind of got comfortable, won some games, got into the 10 line. For them to get the draw they did and to be where they are, I wouldn't call Cal the biggest winner. I think you're not wrong in saying that. I would just say that it's just one of the more unbelievable things to look at the two teams that he beat. Granted, Kansas a little bit down this year, a lot of it down this year, and then St. John's having an executionable weakness that you can exploit, and they did. That's kind of, I'm not necessarily surprised by that. I'll take the victory lap on Ole Miss. I'll spare you the 4 minutes I'm sure I had prepared at some point in the last 3 days. I've calmed down from there. Everyone's saying North Carolina this, North Carolina that, beat Iowa State this, beat Iowa State that. North Carolina would have gotten beaten by 30 by Iowa State. Let me just abundantly make that clear. I don't care about hypotheticals. I think they're ridiculous. For all the people saying this and this and that, who they're playing, let's be honest. If Ole Miss did what they did to Iowa State to keep it close, be physical, make threes, what do you think that Iowa State would have done in North Carolina? It's ridiculous. And I'm not faulting anybody for picking it. There were people way too in on the fact that, they're 11 this, they're going to do this. They're going to it's ridiculous. Ole Miss was completely dismissed as a 6 in one of the toughest conferences ever, if not the toughest conference ever, which I'm sure will come up today at some point. But they were ready for it. And I think their physical schedule was what prepared them to play Iowa State, albeit down Gilbert.
Yeah, regardless, just complete domination. What Chris Beard has gotten out of Dre Davis, a dude who I've seen at Louisville, solid, good player, then goes to Seton Hall. It's kind of the same player, maybe a little better offensively. But you look at him now under Chris Beard in Ole Miss, DeRosa. Offensive rebounding, sticking his nose in, making big timely shots, increase his three-point percentage. As far as being a capable enough shooter from out there, it can take guys off the bounce because he's a big, wide body. That's kind of a weird-looking wing. He's gotten him markedly better, and just his overall consistency. Because I think at Louisville and Seton Hall, there was a consistency factor there where you get 2 good games, 3 weird, kind of not great games. Every night he brings it for Ole Miss, and that's a huge reason why they're so good right now.
I actually thought Dre was very good last year for Seton Hall. I did not expect him to translate as well as he did at Ole Miss. I thought he was kind of one of those guys that transferred and was just okay, he's going to be worse than he was last year, and he wasn't. So full credit to everyone there. I actually am more impressed with what they've done with Sean Padula.
Mm.
Yeah, he was excellent in particularly the North Carolina game. He had some huge shots late. He was great. Sean Padula is a guy I've definitely given some guff to, more just because I thought it was funny. But I've definitely given some guff to. He was
The
very,
defensive questions you gave him all this year were very real. Like that's not. I wouldn't back down from that. To be clear, like I think you were real on that.
Sure. I mean, I agree that there are definitely some limitations with his game. I don't think he's a perfect player, but I thought he was the best player on the floor in the UNC game. And then I think you can make a very good argument. If not, I didn't watch this game in entirety, so I can't give the as firm of a take as I want to. But he could have been the best guard in the Iowa State game too. And Iowa State was a team that had some very good guards. They just didn't show up that day, and they were much worse with that Keyshawn Gilbert. But another point for another day. I was very impressed with Sean Padula. I thought he played very well. And
I don't know why teams. Yeah, I don't know why teams keep going under ball screens on him.
That was so funny.
He
can dribble too. He's a good defender. Goes under that last screen in the corner or on the wing there. Yeah. GG, that was the game.
Yeah, I mean,
playing North Carolina multiple times. By the way, he's played North Carolina now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was his 6th time playing them, and he had his best game. They've gotten better basically every time he's played them. He had 4 points, 6 points, 8 points, 14, 10, 20. So like him being prepared, he playing against Hubert Davis, knowing how they're going to attack him. Albeit the guards for North Carolina are not very good defensively, other than maybe Trimble. I think that was a huge advantage. That was probably a spot we all kind of underestimated, was how they were going to have a defensive plan for him.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point now, looking especially in hindsight with it. But I just do not go under on Padula. He gets his shot off so quick, and he's such a great shooter from outside. Do not go under on him. He will make you pay. Looking at other first and second, kind of the first weekend of games here, Texas Tech. We talked about them getting by UNC Wilmington. They play another mid-major in Drake, who did get the upset over Missouri. I thought they controlled the game, kind of kept it where they needed to be. I know Drake obviously wanted to slow the game down, but Texas Tech's guards, man, we talk all this time about guards will win games for you in March, and they've got as good as guards as anybody in the country. Mm-hmm. Michigan, I mentioned it, shout out to 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. Dallas is number one sports radio station. I was on Friday night of the tournament, actually, and we talked about it, and they asked me through night one who was one of some of the more impressive teams I've seen in the country in the tournament. And I mentioned Michigan, and I'll stay with Michigan now that they've beat Texas A&M. They beat a game, UC San Diego, that we all know that was really good, 30-game winners, really could shoot the basketball, had high major talent. Then they followed up with a really good Texas A&M team that we know is physical and tough, can rebound, and they controlled that game, put 91 up on a really great defensive team. I thought Michigan was a big winner as well of the weekend. They just keep winning. They do feel like a team of destiny, guys.
Yeah, agreed. I'm very interested for that Auburn matchup, because if there is one team that can match the two big lineups that Michigan throws out there, it's Auburn.
Yep.
So it comes down to the guards, and that's Wait, didn't Trey Donaldson play last year at?
Yeah, he played his first couple years at Auburn. So we got the Trey Donaldson whatever, not revenge game, but whatever it's called.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys could see it, but that just clicked for me.
I saw it. Yeah, it was great. I saw it land above the head, turn yellow, and good to go. I thought you were going to go, oh, wait, because you're really good at recall here. I thought you were going to be like, oh, wait, didn't one of the three of us pick Texas A&M to make the Final Four? That's really weird.
I was going to leave you that one.
Yeah.
No, I was self-inflicted here, willing to take the L. I really thought that's where you were going, and I was prepared to be rebuttal. So, yes, this Michigan thing, like, at this point, it's just voodoo witchcraft, and I'm just going to call it that and just be done with it.
Yeah. And the other team we haven't mentioned yet that's dancing to the Sweet 16, that we'll get to these Sweet 16 games in a moment, BYU. I had them, full disclosure, I know how great they'd been. I thought they would I even told you a couple weeks ago, Michael, when you were talking about them, I said they got that Iowa vibe to me, right? They'll play real good. They'll get bounced in the tournament. I was wrong. I picked VCU. I thought VCU's defense would be enough to be physical and speed them up to a point they're not comfortable with, and eventually overcome the BYU offense. And I was wrong. Like what BYU's doing, they beat VCU in a close game, 80-71. They turn around and play the 3-seed Wisconsin, and everybody expected a high-scoring offense, high-tempo type game, which it was. They withstood 37 points from John Tanji and win 91-89. And they did it with a couple defensive stands at the end, especially that final shot on John Tanji, forcing him into a bad turnaround. BYU, man, they're staring down Alabama in the Sweet 16, and I have no reason to think that they can't, if they play at their best, make this a really compelling game in the Sweet 16.
On the initial reaction show we did with House, I said the road opens up for BYU. I could see them making an Elite Eight. I then backed off that pick and took Wisconsin. So I feel like an idiot. But yeah, the Mormons, man, they look good. Demon was very good. Richie Saunders was very good in that game. They just have enough guys where someone's going to get it going someday. Their offense just looks pretty right now. They're playing at a high level. They're rim protectors. Keba Keita, I thought, played a very good game. They're playing at a very high level. I like that team quite a bit. They look good. And yeah, we'll talk about that game later. I'm just going to leave that there, but they look good.
They have every single thing that they would need to win a tournament game. They have someone bought into that role and bought into it with their full mental well-being. Like it's really, really impressive. Arguably one of the most bought in teams across the entire tournament. I have more thoughts on them as we're going to do a preview in a little bit that I'll save for the preview just because it makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, Igor Demon, and they kept talking about in both those tournament games, oh, he's only like a 27% three-point shooter, and he made it felt like every three he took over the weekend. So, I mean, if you're getting that type of production out of him with the offense, Richie Saunders, wow. That dude, whatever flip is switched in him the last month, he is amazing right now.
Yeah.
Is that the right saying? Flip the switch?
No, I just
switch the flip.
You had me second guessing myself. I was like, is it switch the flip or flip the switch? Anyway, you had me second guessing myself for like the last 25 years. I'm like, wait, have I been saying it wrong this whole time? You just saw that moment react for me. That was fun.
Yeah, that's great. What we're going to do now is like we have all year. We're going to shout out our friends and sponsors over at W Energy before we move ahead to the Sweet 16. If you guys were like us and watched wall-to-wall coverage, watched all the games possible you could from the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament over the last 4 days, you knew at some point throughout the day you needed a little energy boost to be able to grind through the night games. Well, it's going to be the same way in a different way when we come up onto Thursday and Friday of Sweet 16 action. It's fewer games, but they start later, and you'll need to go later as well. Go visit our friends at W Energy at www.w.gg right now. If you go visit W Energy, find yourself a container, get the sampler pack. They've got so many good flavors, different flavors that you may have heard of besides the normal strawberry or blueberry or whatever. As you see on the screen, if you're watching along live with us, the Galaxy Grenade. It's a blend of different flavors. They're really good stuff, and it does give you energy without the jitters. It's got natural caffeine. Go visit their website now. Or place yourself an order, and at checkout, use promo code ECB10. You'll save 10% off of your order. We appreciate W. I know they'll appreciate your business, and what better time to do it for the home stretch of the NCAA tournament when you're going to need energy to stay up all night to watch these incredible games. But we appreciate W for being our title sponsor this year. Go visit them. Use promo code ECB10 at checkout. We appreciate you, and I know they appreciate you as well. Gentlemen, let's get into some Sweet 16 action. Let's look at the bracket here. We'll start in the South region. Games will be played on March 28th. So these are, today's 24th. So these are Friday games, right?
Played on my birthday. Friday. Nice birthday present.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So these are Friday night games here. Number 1, Auburn. Number 5, Michigan. And in the bottom part of this, number 6, Ole Miss, or 6 seed, I should say, Ole Miss, 2-seeded Michigan State. Incredible contest. 2 Big Ten versus SEC challenge games here. Let's start with the top game, the top seeded overall in this tournament, the Auburn Tigers playing the 5 seed Michigan Wolverines. Gentlemen, Michael, I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit there about if there's anybody in this tournament that can deal with Michigan's big-to-big pick and roll, it would be Auburn, because you're talking about Dylan Cardwell, you're talking about Janai Broom. They've played all year together. Will be interesting. I will say this, though. Cardwell doesn't move laterally as well as Janai Broom does, but I would imagine these two switch on this pick and roll. Just whoever's got Wolf and whoever's got Vlad Golden, instead of trying to do maybe fighting over it, they just switch. One takes the dive, one stays on the ball to deny an entry pass. When you look at this, I think like most of these games, it comes down to guard play, though. Like, can Michigan's guards, like Trey Donaldson, Roddy Gale finally had a good game against Texas A&M. Can Michigan's guards match the output that Auburn guards give? I think this is a really intriguing matchup that could go down to the wire, despite, according to ESPN, Auburn being favored by 8.5.
Yeah, I'm actually very kind of interested in what you guys have to say. Obviously, we just heard what Josh said. I'm very interested in what Trevor has to say about this game too, because I don't think my read on it is great. I think it's okay. But yeah, I think Auburn kind of kills them. Honestly, I think they're going to match that big to big pick and roll. I think one thing that makes this game interesting to me is the way you beat Auburn. Like we saw Texas A&M do it, who is now not in the tournament, but like the way they beat Auburn was they just killed them on the glass. I think it's very possible that Michigan can do that with the 2 7-footers, the athleticism they have there. They can just kill them on the offensive glass. But Michigan State's also not a great defensive rebounding team. They're one of those teams that rebounds great offensively, not great defensively. Auburn's the same way. I think we could see a lot of offensive rebounds. I think the turnover battle is going to be a killer. Auburn doesn't turn the ball over. Michigan turns the ball over a lot. It almost bit them in the UCSD game. I think it'll bite them here. Auburn can guard that big to big pick and roll. And I just think those Auburn guards are a decent bit better. I trust Miles Kelly. I trust Ahad Pettiford more than I trust Trey Donaldson and those guys. I like Auburn in this spot. You have to hope, because I think this guy makes a big difference. You have to hope, as we're going to say it for every single game for the rest of the tournament, but especially in this one, to me, that's a lie. Especially in every single game, but including this one, you have to hope Chad Baker-Mazara is on his best behavior. You just have to. He is a bad matchup for Michigan. He is a very bad matchup. Michigan does not have a true wing. Roddy Gale's more of a 2. Chad Baker-Mazara has a lot of size on him. I think he's kind of got the quickness to go too. It's hard to guard a lefty. Chad Baker-Mazara, I think, makes a huge difference in this game if he's on. If he's on, really. I think he's a problem. But yeah, I trust Miles Kelly. I trust Denver Jones. I trust Todd Pettiford to make plays. I like this Auburn team a lot. They're my national champion. I'm not going to pick against them against a team that wins every single game close. I think Auburn kind of blows them out.
A couple of things. I hate that we started this game first because I actually am thinking really hard about this one. So just to address this point, I'm glad that you're interested in what I have to say about it. Thank you. Here's what I'm frustrated with. I think Auburn has the better guards. I think Auburn has the better front court. I think Auburn, the coaching thing's really, really close because Dusty's kind of awesome in close games. So it's kind of like, that's actually a thing I'm really confused. I think Dusty might actually be the better X's and O's guy right now. I think Auburn wins basically every single statistical category, and yet I'm still torn. I think this game will be within 5 points. Yeah. Why?
I agree.
Vibes. I don't know. Like, I really don't. Auburn's been that amazing the last few months, and yet I'm that torn on it. Yeah, Chad Baker-Mazara, I don't have enough time for that today. I just feel like there's a Miles Kelly game coming. I don't think they have anybody that can match his size and speed and versatility. Because there's something about Michigan's guards that they're all fast, they're all kind of small, none of them are like stout defenders by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that works perfectly into Auburn's hands. I think that gives Pettiford, maybe they can slow him down. I think that would be maybe the disadvantage there. I think Miles Kelly is too big, too tall, too long. I just feel like there's too much of a matchup disadvantage. And maybe people can argue the other way for Michigan in the front court. Like I still think I would take Broome and Cardwell just because of that big to big passing, the big to big defense, the spacing, the rebound. I think there's enough. Those guys do that a little bit better. I've actually talked about that in Maui when we recapped or previewed Maui. I was like, I think it was recap because they had a couple of plays where Cardwell, like no matter what Broome's doing, Cardwell's all. And I mentioned like his press conference about how bought in he is as a teammate and how those guys are really like brothers now. And I think a lot of that really helped them this year. Cardwell kind of almost looked at him as like an enemy on his own team because of playing time. And I think defensively, I think those two will know how to play Wolf and Golden better than anybody, obviously, because of how good they are. But also the fact they'll win little things. They'll win the rebounds. They'll win the spacing battle. They'll win the ability to defend the weak side. There's a lot of like just little tiny things. And maybe that's X's and O's stuff that Dusty May can kind of figure out. And I think we probably all believe. I just believe that I think Auburn if you were to just lay it out on paper, I know talent isn't always the best way to pick this stuff, but if you were to just lay it out on paper and just say XO, A versus B, I feel like Auburn just has the advantage in too many places.
I agree with a lot of that. Well, actually, what both of you said. There's a couple of things here. The one for Michigan that DeRosa mentioned that scares me in a game like this is the turnovers. Michigan is 324th in the country in turning the ball over. Auburn, especially, the way that they can create live ball turnovers into fast break points, whether it be a dunk at the rim or a kick out three, really would have to scare me if I'm a Michigan player. But you mentioned the word vibes, and you know how I am with historical things. I've been thinking about this. Auburn kind of reminds me, different teams, of course, but kind of reminds me of Duke from 2019 with Zion and them, in the fact that the regular season just killing everybody, just absolutely destroying everybody. And then at the end of the year, it started to play. And even though they were winning some of those games, they were kind of like, just struggling a little bit. Look at NCAA tournament. Yeah, they end up winning by 20 for Alabama State, but Alabama State had them puckered for a while there until Auburn was able to pull away. Creighton gave them a great game until late, where Auburn was kind of able to get away in the final 2 minutes. Look at Duke from 2019 in the NCAA tournament. They played North Dakota State, beat them by 23, but then UCF should have beat them on a tip-in. They win by 1. They play Sweet 16 against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech should have beat them with Kevon Blackshear.
Who beat them?
And then Michigan State beats them in the Elite Eight. They kind of have similarities to that Duke from 2019 to Auburn now, where they're winning these tournament games, but they're playing really tight. And Michigan, what are they doing tight games? If they can drag this game in to a very tight 1-possession game, 2-possession game inside the final 3 or 4 minutes, dude, all bets are off. And Auburn being that close to Auburn, Alabama, because they're playing in Atlanta with a huge, I'd imagine, fan base in this game, they're going to get tight. It's just what happens to these bigger teams and favorites. I think Michigan keeps this really close. I think at the end of the day, Auburn wins, but I think Michigan's going to have them on their heels for a large portion of this game before Auburn eventually pulls away for a win. I think this could be really interesting. I just think Michigan's size, if nothing else, could really bother Auburn in this game.
My only vibe pushback would be the Purdue. This Auburn team reminds me of Purdue losing to the 16 and then losing to Yale and then going on and just killing everybody the next season. I get more vibes of the Purdue team. Michael, I know you have something coming.
To your point, Josh, I'm not saying I agree with it, by the way. But
good
remind
start.
you of that Duke team. Yeah, they lost to Michigan State, right?
They did, but yeah.
In the Elite Eight, right?
Yep, and who we're about to talk to next, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a pushback on Michigan State. We'll get to in a minute.
Okay. Well, let's get to Michigan. Let's get to Sparty, the other game in this region.
Are we not picking Auburn, Michigan, or are we picking after we're done with everything? Are we picking right now?
Well, I thought you guys, just the way you're talking, you're picking Auburn.
Auburn.
Okay, so yeah, we're all picking Auburn.
We didn't officially pick it. I don't know. Like, people like that stuff. I don't know.
Okay, so Auburn, yes, Auburn across the board. I was just reading the tea leaves there. Let's go to the other.
You read them correctly, to be fair.
Let's go to the other one. 6-seed Ole Miss. So we've talked about at the beginning of the show against 2-seed Michigan State, who had a little struggle early with Bryant, was able to pull away there in the second half, was in a hell of a fight with New Mexico last night before able to get in away. Look, Ole Miss dominating in both their contests. We talk about their guard play, how tough they are, the defensive minded. Malik Dia does not look like he should be a matchup problem, being at 6'8" and non-athletic, plays below the rim. But when he steps out and makes shots, it really opens their offense up and spaces the floor a little bit.
He was excellent.
Yeah. And then you look at Michigan State. Who are they carried by? We've talked all year. When Coach was on here, we talked about what makes them great, a traditional Tom Izzo team. They don't have one kind of quote-unquote star. It's a collection of the parts is what gets them through. But when they do have a star, it's Jace Richardson. So what's your guys' feelings on this matchup? I think this, in my opinion, this will be low scoring. Both these teams defensive-minded, physical. Who will win the physicality game, which creates turnovers? Who wins the rebounding game probably determines who wins this ball game. I think it should be a very interesting game, though.
I don't think it'll be too low scoring because these teams also like to push the pace a bit. So I think maybe it won't be as efficient, but like we'll get similar numbers because they play well in transition. I actually have a pretty strong take on this game. If anyone wants to go first, do you want to let me go?
You got it. I'm still thinking.
Yeah. I'm fairly confident how this game goes. One thing Ole Miss is very good at is they don't turn the ball over. Michigan State doesn't really turn teams over, so I don't think Ole Miss will turn the ball over a ton. But what are two things that Ole Miss, their defense is amazing, right? Like you've seen it, Josh, how they like play defensively, especially in the beginning of SEC play, they were excellent.
Well, they pinch drives off real well and then recover out the shooters in the corners.
So they recover to shooters well, who were not really worried about shooting threes, Michigan State.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good driving team. But one thing that Ole Miss does poorly is they foul a lot. They foul a lot, and because they're not particularly big inside, that if you can get those drives, you can finish over the top because they're not particularly big. Malik Diaz, 6'8", for what he gave UNC, he gave UNC problems. You can finish over him because he's only 6'8", not a great rim protector. They foul a lot. You know who draws a lot of fouls? Michigan State. You know who drives relentlessly? Michigan State. You know who I trust more on 5 days' notice to make a game plan? It's Tom Izzo, actually. It is Tom Izzo. Yep. I trust him. I think the matchup favors them because Mississippi's not a very big team. They foul a lot. And Michigan State rebounds really, really well offensively. Cohen Carr he is 6'5", 225. He has been excellent in these two games. He's averaging, just doing the math in my head, that would be 13 points and 7.5 rebounds. Honestly, he's done a lot of things that aren't counted in the stat sheet too. He's been excellent in these two games, and I think he causes problems for Ole Miss on the glass. I think he's, honestly, as weird as this sounds, I think he's the best rebounder in this game. I think he's going to cause problems. I think we're getting a Cohen Carr double-double. I think he's going to cause real problems. Michigan State's not going to let Ole Miss really get going from three. They're going to kill him on the glass. They're going to kill him in just drawing fouls consistently. They're going to burn him. They're going to slow burn him. So that's kind of why I disagree with Josh's point about this game being low scoring. I think it could be low scoring, but once the fouls start, it'll start low scoring, but once the fouls start ending up, Michigan State's going to get to the line, and then slowly but surely you're just going to see it crawl up a bit. And it's like, okay, this will be an average scoring game in the end. I got Michigan State. I think Michigan State wins this game by double digits. I would put them by 15. Give me 82-67 Michigan State.
I think the free throw line is a huge point you just brought up. And look, we talked about Jace Richardson, but the reality is Trey Holloman has been really good for him here lately. And if they get anything from Jaden Atkins here, I think I trust Michigan State's collection of guards in Richardson, Fears, Holloman, and Atkins. I think if they play well enough that they win this game. I think they're better than Ole Miss guards. I like the free throw point because they are going to go downhill and attack the paint relentlessly. I like that prediction. I think I'll go Michigan State as well because of that, Trev.
That's it. I have nothing. I have nothing on just adding to the what this game plays out to be because I think you guys all said everything that makes sense. The guard. It was going to come down to the guards for me. It was going to come down to everything Michael said about rest, the drives. It's all real stuff. It's all stuff that you intangibly you reach a point where historical data is actually really relevant. And I'll be picking Michigan State in this game. I will historically data proven. I'll be picking against them no matter who they play the next round because data says that they won't make the Final Four. No 2 seeds ever made the Final Four that's never been ranked in the top 25. I've made that point many times this year, as well as the fact that they're not a top 20. They're a top 20. No, yeah, they're still actually in the realm of the matchup for who they play. So I take that back on the second point I was going to make. There's also just enough. I have enough concern about them offensively that if they play Auburn, they're screwed. So I'll take them in this one. The issue for me is that Ole Miss has enough guys that can change the entire pace of the game very quickly, Padula included. That I think if that happens at the wrong time, albeit I think we all agree that this will be close for some part of the second half. So if Ole Miss takes control of it in that middle part of the second half, a lot of this could change quickly. But I think I just lean closer to more DeRosa's point that I believe in the Spartans as far as I can believe in them. And I think they're the better team. I think they're better guards. I think Coach Izzo is a better coach. So I think that's ultimately enough to make me feel like they're fine. But we're not projecting the Elite Eight just yet, but I'm not picking them much further.
Look, I will say on Ole Miss's point, Michigan State's the best team in the country at defending the three-point line, which could obviously affect Sean Padula and Matthew Murrell. But if Ole Miss is to win this game, they're going to get production out of Matthew Murrell and a guy off the bench in Jamin Brakefield. He's shown he's not a great three-point shooter by any means at 6'8", but he's a veteran dude who's been there for a while that can step out And if you can draw some of it, especially depending on lineups that Michigan State will play, like say somehow he gets matched up and Carson Cooper is on him, he can draw him out in a pick and pop. Cooper's probably not going to rotate out fast enough. If Brakefield can hit just 2 threes, it opens up the floor a little bit more for guys like Jalen Murray and Padula to operate in. So I think that Matthew Morrell, Jamin Brakefield could be huge in this game if Ole Miss was to win this game. But I'm going Michigan State. I just think that they've got the better guards. Defensively, they're slightly better. And the Izzo saying, like, he'll have them prepared. So I'm going Michigan State as well.
I do want to retract something I said earlier. They also fall outside of the top 20 offense for the last 19 or last 22 champions. So they'll get that. Their offense will eventually be the thing that faults them. It will not be today or Friday, I guess, technically. They're 25th. They're just outside of that. So I think that was kind of what I was alluding to. I had my notes on the wrong page. And then I just want to bring up an overarching point about Tom Izzo. I know we're running close here. But 16th time in 27 NCAA tournament appearances he's made the Sweet 16. I don't want to hear a word about the one championship 25 years ago. I don't. He's one of the best coaches in the last 50 years in college basketball. Like, I'm so sick of hearing about it. Like, one championship this and a merchant of that. Like, I don't care. 16 out of 27 times he made the NCAA tournament, he's in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and he for the longest time until recently, every class he had ever had that stayed till their senior year had made a Final Four, which was nuts to think about.
It's insane. Like,
anyway,
sorry.
And we talk so much today in today's game about, like, the older coaches, like, oh, they're not, like, doing this. Like, Bill Self, is his game passing by? Is this guy? Tom Izzo has built a team his way. He didn't bow to anyone. He built a team his way, the way he wanted to, and this team is succeeding. For all the other old coaches, we have to get out of this game, we have to do this. The longevity of Tom Izzo, I think you also have to factor in. The 16 to 27, combined with the fact that his team is doing it this year.
I brought this up weeks ago. I don't remember why or whatever. I'm sure Michigan State came up, but he has been in the game long enough that college basketball changed once, if maybe not twice, if you want to consider the transfer portal. I'm just thinking from an X's and O's standpoint, and the game changed back into his hands. It went like away from him for a while, and you had those arcs with the 4-year guys that Josh made a point about, the Final Four, where like it was awesome when he was first a coach because that's how he won a national championship, all that stuff back then. And then college basketball went towards the threes and and then it came back down and then it came back up. And then guys like Osher Shibwe and all that recently, and Drew Timme, and like, it's crazy how like that arc has just kind of benefited him from sticking around.
That's a really good point, actually. Like, he's been in
like
so
February.
long. Yeah, that's a great point. Let's move on to the East region now so we can keep this thing going. Number 1, Duke against number 4, Arizona. These two teams played earlier in the year. Duke got a true road victory over the Wildcats back in December. I think it was December, late November, early December. Look, Duke has looked amazing so far. Like, we know how good they are. We're concerned about Cooper Flagg, the injury sustained in the ACC tournament. Does not look like it's affected him much at all so far. But I will say this, since we're presenting opposite facts here. We had this discussion today I had with a couple other people. Duke, of all the 1 seeds, has looked amazing, blowing Mount St. Mary's out, blowing Baylor out. But objectively, they've played the easier teams when you compare them to what Auburn's had to go through, what Houston's had to go through, and what Florida's had to go through. So is it a product of Duke's just that good, which we know they are really good, or is it like maybe the competition's not been up to par like some of the other 1 seeds? We're going to find out in the Sweet 16 in this rematch, because Caleb Love gets one more crack at Duke. Arizona, we talked at the end of the year that they had found themselves out. They had started to figure out some rotational stuff. Guard play had got better. They started limiting some turnovers and creating more opportunities to score the basketball. Michael, can Arizona extract revenge from early in the year? And can Caleb Love, for one final parting shot, take Duke down one more time?
I like the narrative you've came up with here in this spot. I'm picking Duke, by the way. I like the narrative you've come up with. I think if you think of sports kind of like video games, if you think those are like fun, like just thinking like going through boss battles, the boss battles you've got for Cooper Flagg are awesome. Round 1, you're just learning the controls, right? It's like, all right, this is the test round. We're learning the game. He did that.
Semi-sprained ankle, right.
Yeah, exactly.
You include that in there.
We're learning the controls. We're getting in there. Round 2, you have to face a guy who was on the team last year, a former friend, Jeremy Roach. Beat him. Good. Round 3, you got to face the guy who beat the last guy, the guy who ended Coach K's career. You got to beat that. You got to beat Caleb Love. You got to beat that guy. Good narrative.
This
Round
is
4,
great.
we get there. Who are the teams Duke plays? It's either
Alabama or BYU.
Exactly. So what you're saying is Cooper Flagg either has to be the other guy who was compared to White Giannis and Grant Nelson, yeah, or he's got to beat his white kind, the Mighty Mormons. He's got to show who's the real dominant white guy.
I love how you came up with that narrative on the fly too. I can tell you were only prepared to the Sweet 16. I could tell you were like ready for that, and then you were like, "Oh crap!" After that,
I love
the next round where they play probably maybe Houston. You got to beat the pretty boy allegations there. You got to beat the pretty boy allegations straight up. You play Houston, you got to play tough. You got to beat the pretty boy allegations. That's what it comes down to. You can't be weak against Houston. Then the national championship game, I'm not going to lie how many different teams it could be, but like let's just for argument's sake, let's just say it's Auburn, right? Just even though I'm not gonna lie, I'm not very confident Auburn gets there, but like let's just hypothetically speaking, let's say it's Auburn. You got to prove you're the national player of the year now. You got to prove you're the best guy.
No, that's real.
You got to prove
That's
it.
real.
We're thinking about sports like boss battles. The Cooper Flagg's got some very fun boss battles coming up. But Duke's gonna win this game.
Clip that because that might be the clip of the month right there. That's Instagram ready.
Look, it was like a roller coaster. We had no idea where the hell it was going to stop at.
Once it got past the 316, you lost me. I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I like it. And I was in for the first 3 rounds. Okay, one thing that we're not thinking about whatsoever, at least I don't think people are, is Duke caught Arizona at the perfect time earlier.
Earlier in the year. Too,
literally.
yes.
This was not the same Arizona team whatsoever. There are guys all over this roster that had not filled into their roles effectively yet. They had a lot of question marks. I still think they kind of do. I fade teams that are not exactly my favorite defensive teams, and I think Arizona, the analytics say that they're pretty good. I'd say that there's some question marks I have as well, generating, I'm not sure they generate enough turnovers. The part that I'm struggling with, I think the narrative is a great point. I think Caleb Love, that whole thing is I think it's incredible. I think it's something to really, really keep in the back of your mind when you're picking this game up until, I think they play Thursday at 9:39. Yeah. So like you picking that one at 9:38. I understand Caleb Love being that much of a doubt. Caleb Love might also shoot 1 of 28 tomorrow or on Thursday. So like let's just be really, really abundantly clear about that. Guys with Arizona have stepped into their roles. I think that really changes who this team is. I think that's why they've won the 2 games that they won. I should have started with this like Michael did. I'm picking Duke. But there's just a couple of things that you need to be thinking about, and I think I laid them out hopefully pretty well.
Look, and I'll add to the Arizona how they can win. Like obviously Caleb Love, if he gets hot, like could go have one of those magical nights we talk about in the NCAA tournament. Like we like to kind of poke fun about some of the shot selection, but the reality is we've always said this. If he can get cooking, he could absolutely go for a 30-piece and or at least play a part in knocking Duke out of this game. But I don't think he's the main story if Arizona was to find a way to win this. I think it's guys like Toby Awaka. I think it's a guy like even Jaden Bradley. Thank you. That's what I was going to say, because his emergence later in the year when they started getting good took all the pressure off Caleb Love as far as like we don't have to rely on Caleb to necessarily go make a play. Jaden Bradley can go make a play. And the other guy I'm looking at, he's been so up and down, but size-wise I worry about against Duke. But if they could get anything out of Henry Visar, anything to negate what Malawach does or just block shots or whatever the case may be, Arizona's in a great spot to be in this game, but they have to get something besides fouls out of him. I've got Duke as well, but I will go on record and say I think Arizona has this very tight in the final 2 minutes of the game. There's something about it. I think Arizona's got enough talent. I think they make enough shots to really put a lot of game pressure on Duke, but I've got Duke winning this game. Let's go down to the bottom part of the East region here. It'll be the first game of the East region and the Sweet 16. 6 seed BYU, 2 seed Alabama. You want points? We got points here. This should be electric. Like I worry about BYU's overall athleticism against Alabama, but Alabama's been tested already in this tournament. We've talked about the first round game where they were a little tight. Then St. Mary's just didn't have the athleticism, but they were able to frustrate and slow them down. BYU runs intricate, beautiful offense. The thing that worries me for BYU besides athleticism, Alabama got a tremendous case study in the SEC with this type of offense, where it's nonstop spread, nonstop motion. If you overplay, you're getting back cut. They've seen it 3 times with Kentucky. They've seen it with Florida. They've seen it with Missouri. So they'll be prepared. But BYU, unlike St. Mary's and unlike their first round game, will hit shots, you would think. I think, Michael, this should be an incredibly entertaining game, if nothing else.
Who do you think wins this one, Josh?
Look, there's a part of me sincerely wants to pick BYU. I just worry about athleticism I don't think they clearly have a dude who can play around the rim with Cliff Amourier, and that could be the difference. Like a putback dunk could literally be the difference in this game.
I see it. I'm going the other way. I got the Mormons. I think the positional size makes a huge difference in this game. Alabama is very small in the backcourt. Mark Sears, LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway. They're not big. BYU on the roster doesn't have a guy below 6'4". Dallin Hall 6'4". They definitely have the speed advantage over Dallin Hall. Trevin Nell 6'5". You have the speed advantage there. Richie Saunders 6'5". I don't know if you have a speed advantage there. I'm not going to lie. Dawson Baker, same there. But they're big. That is a big team. I think it's going to be kind of tough for Alabama to cover them in isolation. I really do. I think Alabama's going to struggle defensively. On the other end, they're going to score. Don't get me wrong, but
who's going to draw more fouls? Richie Saunders, the way he flops around at the rim, or Mark Sears, the way he does that head snap and fools the officials? Who draws more fouls in this game? I'm serious. Mark Sears or Richie Saunders?
Mark Sears.
Yeah, I'd say Sears. It's a good question, but I think the size of BYU makes a huge difference in this game. I think BYU is going to be really able to score inside. In SEC, goodness, Big 12 play, BYU was nearly 60% from 2. They shoot a ton of threes. They move the ball really well. I think everything BYU does, Alabama's going to kind of struggle to cover them. On the other end, Alabama's going to score. Let's be real. They're going to score as well. Very similar offense, but I don't know. I trust some of the BYU rim protectors. I like the positional size they have, and I think this game's going to come down to 3-point shooting. And dare I say it, I think BYU has better shooters.
Yeah, I do too. And
statistically, that's correct. They're 37.3%, 28th in the country. Alabama's 35%. That's actually been like a knock on them this year.
It is. We've talked about it, Trevor. Yeah, we've talked about it, right? Where Alabama can get red hot and take a high volume, but they don't always have the best percentage. And the other thing we're not even talking about, the health of Grant Nelson. Like if he's not healthy in a game like this, to Michael's point, with the way they'll have to have some of their bigs get out and guard BYU's action and versatility, positional versatility, like that could be a big loss. Like they needed Grant Nelson to make it to this point. If he doesn't play or he's not at 100%, that could be a huge weapon in BYU's favor, Trev.
Yeah, I agree with DeRosa on the positional size. I disagree on the fact that their defense is going to be effective enough to stop Alabama. They're the worst defense left in the NCAA tournament. They're 71st. I think that's a huge standout, and I fade teams this late in the tournament that are this bad defensively. I say bad, like that's not a knock on them. Bad in retrospect of comparing them to 15 other teams. Let's keep that in mind when I say anything about numbers today. I also think the tournament experience of Alabama will prevail. And so recent tournament success, of course. So I think that's going to be the biggest factor. And 3-point shooting, I think they're still, to discredit the fact that they're still a 35% 3-point shooting team, like they'll be fine. I think that will matter eventually. It will not matter today because a 2-point difference is really, not something I'm going to scoff about. I pick Alabama. I think this game will actually be close towards the end. And I think what gets it done is I think they'll have the best player on the floor, and Mark Sears will make a game-winning play.
I will say, to BYU in their favor, Miami made a Final Four 2 years ago with a defense that was ranked worse than BYU's. Alabama's last year.
That's right. That's great. They have no. Yeah. They can both be true. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm picking in specifically matchup based here. BYU's defense specifically against Alabama is the problem. It's not about the fact they can't make it that far, which I also agree they cannot, or also think they cannot, but it's about the specific like head-to-head matchup, which obviously, to your point, you could pick every single game. Miami would have been the worst defensive team. I get it. But like in this specific instance against Alabama, it's going to be their disadvantage.
I get it. I was just saying what we get lost in these games is all it takes is one game. BYU could be great for defensively one game and this be their best defensive unit the whole time and be able to shut Alabama out for 4 minutes, and that's all it takes. That's the only.
I'd say that about every game. We haven't even gotten to Kentucky yet, and that's going to be my knock on them again. So, like, what?
Yeah,
sure. Like, it's the NCAA tournament. Of course, it's any game.
Let's move down to the West here. 1 seed Florida, 4 seed Maryland. Maryland's guards have been really good. Derek Queen makes a game winner against Colorado State. Travel, maybe, but could have been called a blocking foul as well, so it kind of cancels.
They're never going to call that travel.
Exactly. Never, ever going to call this. Florida, according to ESPN right now, is a 6.5-point favorite. Florida had to scratch, claw, and fight to beat UConn. Walter Clayton Jr. continues to show he's probably the best guard in college basketball. Like, taking into account everything, big shot making, and he didn't even play well up until late in the game. He's amazing. Trev, I'll come to you first on this. What can Maryland do to pull off the upset? Because it looks like Florida is just on a path to a title.
Yeah, that's that is a loaded question. That's for sure. Because I look across the board, just at, I try to help numbers tell the story like I have for every one of these picks. Man, I'm just not sure there's an exploitable thing. I really don't. Like I forgot to bring it up earlier with Michigan. Like in Auburn, I think it's a very similar type of game where I don't know what Michigan can exploit. I'm not sure there's something like you have to be like, to your point earlier about 2 minutes ago about like all it takes is one game. You have to find something to exploit. That's where I think that really Miami exploited the fact that they had 3 best guards against any team they played. Mm-hmm. That was we can look back on that revisionistly, however you want, but like that was why they won those games. Those were the 3 best guards. Jordan Miller had the best 2-3 week game stretch of his entire life. He'll never have that again. Like, love that guy to death. But that was their distinct advantage that they exploited. I'm not sure there's a single thing that Maryland can exploit. I think Florida's better athletically. I think they're deeper. I think that's actually ultimately the thing that gets it done. They're battle tested against UConn. They're better in the front court. They're better in the back court. They're better from 3. There's just too much works against Maryland that obviously they're going to find a way to keep this close. Don't get me wrong. They have some incredible guards. They have the best starting 5, I argued, in the entire country a few weeks ago. There's just not, I would love to sit here and I love how you play host and you pass the ball around, you ask us the questions and give us, sometimes the questions you ask don't make sense for how I'm going to answer them. And I'm going to just I told you, no matter how you ask them, I'm going to give you my answer, however I already planned it, as best as I can give you. And there's literally, I don't think there's anything Maryland can exploit. I think Florida wins this game by 20.
DeRosa, here's the thing. Maryland's 6th in the country in adjusted defense. So obviously great defensively. But they can't, in my opinion, they can't do what Connecticut did to almost perfection to have a chance to beat Florida. Connecticut made that I think Dan Hurley even said he made it a Big East game where it's physical, it's nasty, a lot of stoppages, slowing it down in both the half court, run when they get a chance defense or on transition, but keep it real slow, tight possessions, all that. Maryland is 64th in adjusted tempo. They're best when they run too. You can't outrun Florida. So in order, in my opinion, to win this game, they've got to make it a half-court game, and I just don't think it works to what they're best at.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Man, I don't feel confident in this game whatsoever. I think you guys both made very good points, which is why I will, if like gun to my head, you made me make a pick, it is Florida, but I'm not as confident as you two. I think Maryland has the best starting 5, maybe the best starting 5 in the tournament, probably does. And I think they can match Florida's size up front. Like Queen and Reese, I think is the better front court in this game. I think that causes problems for Florida. The guards is a huge difference, but I'm a huge Jacoby Gillespie guy, guys. I really like Jacoby Gillespie, and I think he can kind of cause some problems for Walter Clayton, frankly. And to the point you made on UConn.
He's going to have to. No, I was just going to your point, he's going to have to.
To the point you made on UConn, I thought, and granted, like what I'm going to say, like it's Dan Hurley. I thought Dan Hurley coached circles around Todd Golden. Circles. I mean, UConn coached a masterful game, and frankly, I thought UConn was the better team. I honestly played as in like they played better that day. I thought UConn could have won that game. Florida won just because of talent. They're the more talented team, but I thought like just based on how the game looked, based on like team cohesiveness and that sort of stuff, and executing a game plan and all that, I thought UConn was better. So that worries me for Florida coming up to a game like this. It really does. Against a really good starting 5, I think Derek Queen could cause real problems to that Florida front court. I really do. And Jacoby Gillespie, I really like. If you can get a good Rodney Rice game, like these teams are constructed very similarly, which I think kind of leads to this game being fairly competitive. But yeah, I do lean Florida, I guess, if you made me make a pick. But if you guys both pick Florida, just to be different, I will pick Maryland just to see, because I think Maryland is very live in this game. I think Maryland wins it.
I think
45% of the time ish.
I
think they cause real problems. I really do. And I think defensively, I think they have the answer for Florida. But yeah, my argument was going to be, I don't trust Todd Golden as a March coach because he's only won two tournament games, and they both were this year. But then Kevin Willard's on the other side. And this is also his first Sweet 16. So he's not the guy to exploit that. But man, I'm not. Everybody else loves this Florida team, and they could be the team that burns me. Every single year, there's a team that that everybody else loves, that I'm like, are you guys sure? And they burn me every year. That's Florida this year, but I don't like this. I don't trust this Florida team the way everybody else does. I really don't. I think Maryland can get them.
I think my favorite thing about you is that I think that you're going to land somewhere on a point, and I think somehow if you finish it, which I'm glad that you did, I think you end up on the right answer most of the time. Yeah. And what I mean by that is you talked about Dan Hurley, and I'm gonna leave it what I'm about to say and just move on. But I think you're right. I think he coached circles around. I think it was an executed game plan perfectly. I would expect nothing less from the quote best coach in the country, unquote. But that is the last coach that will be better than Todd Golden in this tournament that they will play. I don't care who it is in the East or the South or whoever the Final Four team above them is. I think unless they play Kelvin Sampson in the national championship game, which I have, maybe Shire, whatever. Like, let's say we go all once or whatever. I think it's the last coach that they'll play he won't be at least on the way to the Final Four. We'll say. All right, a lot of hypothetical, like you laid out earlier with the
I disagree with that, and I'm ready to talk about the next game.
Yeah, I think there's
I'm just to getting to the Final Four. That's the last coach that you have to worry about at that point. And if that's literally the biggest deciding factor right now, that would be my pushback on Maryland. And I agree with you on the other part with the lineups.
The way I phrased it like that is just because I'm a huge Grant McCaslin guy, and
they've shown that there's teams they've already shown that teams can exploit some of their game planning.
In this tournament. Look, I'll give my prediction real quick. I say Florida wins and covers 6.5. I do think Maryland keeps it tight. I think
I picked by 20. That seems a little harsh, but I do think it's actually going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I think Florida covers 6.5. Here's the other thing, though. The bottom game, we're assuming Florida gets out. Who would they play in the Elite Eight? The winner of 3-seed Texas Tech and 10-seed Arkansas. Look, when he coaches like this, now we didn't see it the final couple years, but the last month, whatever happened, and I'm talking about watch the way they game plan schematically, watch the position. He's even running out of bounds plays, guys. He's running out of bounds plays, and I know that sounds silly. He didn't run that the last 3, 4, 5 years at his last stop. I think
you're telling me he's coaching a basketball team? That's crazy.
Exactly, but he's got them bought in. And the pieces fit the way he's using Jonas Adu now and got the best out of him. Trevon Brazil has been, where did this dude come from? He looked like 2 years ago prior to the ACL injury or whatever, when Arkansas was pretty good then coming out of Maui. He's back to his best version. He's got the freshmen finally. They're playing better, and Carter Knox and Billy Richmond tightened his rotation. Cal's doing a great job the last month coaching. Look, if we're going to be harsh on him, I'll give him credit when he deserves it. Look, what do we feel about this? Because I think they're as alive as ever to beat Texas Tech and go to the Elite Eight, as crazy as it sounds, because it sounds like they're getting a Dude Thero back, their best player, by the way.
Yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of the St. John's game was that St. John's was a bad matchup for any SEC team. As in, no, the other way around. Yeah. Any SEC team pretty much was a bad matchup for St. John's because St. John's was a team that wanted to out-athlete you. It's hard to out-athlete SEC teams, right? So the game was going to come down to skill and execution. And those are two things St. John's really struggled with. St. John's was the hammer in every single Big East game. They were the hammer. They're not going to be the hammer against an SEC team. You have to find ways to kind of be as physical as you want to be, but also have some skill to it. St. John's didn't really have some skill to it. RJ Lewis was bad because RJ Lewis didn't deserve Big East Player of the Year. Kadari Richmond wasn't good because Kadari Richmond would be a very good dude in the SEC, but he's a dude. Zuby was actually flawless. Zuby was great in that game. And Texas Tech, weirdly enough, has a guy that's better than Zuby, so that's something. I just think it was a really good matchup angle for Arkansas and why they were able to succeed in that game. Just I mean, if you're a team that can protect the rim against St. John's and match them athletically, you're going to beat them. And that's exactly what Arkansas was. I thought because those teams were so similar that it actually was a benefit in this case versus in some other cases, like Drake against Texas Tech, it was a negative because Texas Tech was just more talented while also being the same version. The talent in that game was comparable. All that to say, yeah, I had Texas Tech in my Final Four before in a week ago. I had Texas Tech in my Final Four. That is not going to change. Texas Tech, I think, honestly, kind of smokes Arkansas in this game. I think this is a levels game to me. The talent will be there, and I think it'll be fairly competitive for a good 32 minutes. But then just Texas Tech's going to go on a run. They're a team when they are on offensively, those shooters are going, and they are going. Texas Tech, also keep in mind, you mentioned Adu Thiero. Texas Tech was without Chance McMillan in this run. He is their best offensive player. I wouldn't call him their best all-around player, but he's their best offensive player. He makes their team very different. I think Texas Tech can match Arkansas physically. Like, JT Toppin is a dude. I think he's going to get going on the interior. Like, you can't run Big Z against JT Toppin. You can't. You couldn't run Big Z against Zuby. You definitely can't run him against JT Toppin.
I don't think he plays a whole lot.
I think Calvert's going to try to do that.
He's been going a lot of Jonas Adu in these matchups. Yeah. Look, and I'll think the one thing, and I agree. Full disclosure, I have Texas Tech winning this game because I think at the end of the day, they will hit a few more shots. Yeah. But during this run, ever since Trevor mentioned it, that Kentucky game kind of woke Arkansas up and got them going here. Look, they played a high-powered Kentucky offense, held them to 79 on bad shooting. That they played Alabama close in Bud Walton, only lost by 4, had them down late in the game. Look, when you say you held Alabama 85, we know that's tough to do regardless. They played Auburn, had them dead to rights in Auburn, and it got away from them late, held them to 67. They've played Missouri, got them in the get-back game the very next game, beat them 92-85. The point being is when they're playing these high-powered offenses that can really shoot, their defense steps up because of the athleticism, the switchability, and they block shots at the rim. There's no reason to say that they can't go, especially if they get a Adu Thiero back and Boogie Fland makes shots. There's no reason to think their defense can't frustrate Texas Tech enough to really be in this game and have a chance to win at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just thinking about it as well, you made very good points, Josh. And I think my opinion changes a little bit just based on what you said. And also, I don't think there's a talent. I think Arkansas is kind of a more talented team in this game. So I'm still picking Texas Tech, obviously. Like, my confidence was sky high. Now it's like moderate. But yeah, I still got Texas Tech.
I'll be short and sweet because there's other games I have more thoughts on. Stylistically, I think this is like big time matchup advantage for Texas Tech. I think that they're going to be able to control the game. I think they're going to be able to be more physical. I just think there's just more things that they are going to do right that will help you win a Sweet 16 game historically. That I think will benefit them greatly. So I'll pick Texas Tech.
Yeah, I mean, we all went Tech. I will say that we all went Tech, but I will not be shocked if Arkansas is not in this game until the very last buzzer. Midwest final region here, so we can round things out. 1 seed. This was the only region who went all chalk. The top 4 seeds advance in Indianapolis on Friday night. 1 seed Houston, 4 seed Purdue, 3 seed Kentucky, 2 seed Tennessee. Incredible games. 3 elite defensive teams. 1 who has jumped 70 spots in the last 3 weeks. Incredible games. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Houston, Purdue. Trev, I know you love Houston. I've been on the bandwagon this year because of the offensive end, but we did talk about in our text exchange that you brought something up that I think was a great point if you want to tell the audience why Purdue could potentially steal this one here.
Tweeted it as well. Congrats, Houston, for making the Sweet 16 and having to play Purdue and, let me check my notes, Indianapolis. Are we for real? Like, is this real? Like, is Purdue going to get this hand-picked game? Like, are we like it? I have enough thoughts about Purdue. I'll leave it alone. Yeah, am I picking against Houston? Absolutely not. Honestly, I'd love to be like, well, vibes, but they're going to be able to control. Like, if there's one thing that I think that not control the game, I know that Braden Smith, I know that's a big thing that they produce. People are going to bring up today. But Houston, they're going to be more physically dominant than Purdue. They don't have Zach Edey anymore, so I think that's a huge disadvantage immediately right there. They haven't been able to figure out the front court. That's been something that each game they've kind of had to adjust how their front court's going to play, which I think is a good thing. I think Painter's a really, really good coach. You mentioned about like preparation. You give me 5 days of Kelvin Sampson prepare for a team and to prepare a game plan for a team that he's spent a lot of time this year on kind of working them game to game and getting his guards really comfortable. I think they're playing some of the most comfortable basketball they've played all year at the guard spot. They're the better guard, depth. I would take Braden Smith at just a head-to-head against anybody there. I think Houston's just more physically demanding. I think that they're more battle-tested, and I think that they'll be, the better team.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say on this game. I agree with Trevor. This game reminds me a lot of, there was another time where Purdue played a team in Indianapolis. Do you guys remember that game? This was, granted, Purdue's much better, but this game was back in December.
Auburn. Was it the Auburn game?
Yep. Texas A&M.
Oh, A&M. That's right. Yeah, A&M. Yeah.
Houston.
Almost like Purdue gets these. No, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Houston is just the better version of A&M. Like that.
Yeah,
realistically, they're the exact. A&M in that game, granted, again, Purdue's gotten better over time, but A&M in that game got almost 50% of their offensive rebounds. A&M was hitting shots. They got open. And A&M forced 16 Purdue turnovers.
Yeah.
I think Houston got to do the same. I think this game will be competitive for a good way throughout because Purdue's a very good three-point shooting team. And if you want to beat Houston, you have to hit shots, and Purdue can hit shots. But I think slowly over time, we're going to see around like the 28 to 32 minute mark. In that little media timeout, you're going to see just the body language of Purdue just feel defeated. And you're going to see Houston is not going to stop. They're going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming. They're going to go on a run, an extended run, like a 12-2 run over the course of like 4 minutes. You're going to feel that. Purdue's going to have a drought, and they're going to break them. I think around that time, Houston breaks them. Houston wins this game by like 12 points.
Look, I love that. Death by 1,000 cuts seems a lot likely because I do think this could be low possession. Here's a couple things. Purdue, you mentioned three-point shooting. Look, they've got to be able to get Braden Smith. They've got to get Fletcher Lawyer going. You would think TKR has to use face-up game more because he's not going to be able to back down the physicality that Houston's front court will be able to put on him. I think they can push him off the block. So he's going to have to go to more of a face-up game, try to take him off the bounce. Purdue does a good enough job getting to the free throw line. So if they can get into the Houston's bench early enough, maybe they can hang around or have an advantage there. Look, Gonzaga got back in that Houston game because they pressed and they were able to space the floor and they score at will when Gonzaga gets going. Painter doesn't press until late in the game. If you wait too late in the game, you're not going to beat Houston. I'd like to see them come out and press early, see if maybe you at least speed the game up. Maybe that works to your advantage. And the other thing, we've talked about Houston's offense and how great it's been this year in comparison to years past that where they've got tripped up in games like this. Painter won't do it because he's such an old school, staunch man-to-man guy. But I swear to you, I would throw zone at Houston and just be like, look, I'm daring LJ Cryer and I'm daring Sharp and I'm daring these other guys. Beat us from deep. If you can go out and hit 9 or 10 threes, then we lose anyways. He won't do it because he's a man-to-man guy. That's what I would do. I would throw some zone and just be like, you're not getting paint touches, beat us from 3. With that being said, I think Purdue keeps it close for a while, to Michael's point, but then ultimately death by 1,000 cuts. Houston wears them down. I've got Houston winning. Like, the one knock has always been the offense, and they've seemingly fixed that this year. Like,
Marissa, were you about to make the exact same counterpoint to the make them beat them from 3?
You make the point first, but yeah, I think we were.
Houston's 39.8% from 3. That's number 1 in the country.
No, I know that. No, I get that.
So making them beat them at the thing they're at best, I'm not sure that's. I think the zone is a good idea. I think you're gonna have to figure out. It can't be a typical. It's gonna have to be some kind of zone that confuses them. Which I think, to your point, you may have brought it up. Maybe I missed it while I was looking at the stats. Is that final couple minutes there in their last game showed that if you can get them in the backcourt and you can pressure them early, that actually is a disadvantage to you. Like that's something that Houston really struggled with for whatever reason. I think those guys are all incredible ball handlers, and I think that's a weird thing that threw them off. I think it's going to be maybe an element of surprise. Maybe that's the 2.3 zone as a surprise, but being the result of it, trying to let them beat you from 3 is the part I have a problem with.
Well, no, I get that. Here's the thing too, though. I don't know. I don't have it here on KenPom, but it does their 3-point attempts to field goal attempts is 296, which means they don't take a lot, but the ones they take, they make. If you make them take higher volume, though, there's a chance that instead of going 9 of 15, dare them into taking them because that's all you're getting. Maybe they only go like 7 of 25, and now you have 18 extra possessions, assuming you get rebounds. That's what I'm saying. You got to pick something because if you play them strictly man-to-man, Houston's going to destroy you. You have to pick your poison.
It's not even man-to-man, though. I would run them off the three-point line. I would do the opposite of what you said. They're actually in the bottom. They're in the 200s, 270s in two-point percentage. They struggle in that 10 to 15-foot area. And if you can force them off the three-point line into that area, now, granted, you're dumping it down to Roberts, who's getting healthier. You're dumping it down to Francis, who's, let's just call it a doormat offensively. He's the top 3 defender in the country. So I think I'd do the opposite. I would run them off three-point line, and I would force them to do stuff inside. And at that point, take your chances with you're going to be the better three-point shooting team on the other side, which I don't have their produced three-point stats on the other side, but I'm sure that they're not terrible. Just going off of like my memory.
They're ninth, 38.5.
Perfect. So then it's I literally would do the exact opposite of what you said. However, neither of us are Matt Painter, and so I'd be curious to see where you're going to go with this.
Purdue's 2-point defense, though, is 341st in the nation.
So basically, these teams net wash each other out. And so here's where I'll go with this: is Houston has a top 3 defender in the front court, and they have a top 3 defender in the back court in LJ Cryer. I think that's a huge disadvantage for Purdue. Done. Call it what it is.
We will agree to disagree. I would just be, again, with the balls thing too, and in a dome, the sight lines are different. The shooting percentages don't always carry over.
Why is this played in Lucas Oil? What the hell is going on?
Cambridge is literally like 12 steps from Lucas Oil.
Yeah, it is. Money, and I guess I don't know. They've got it cut off to where 30,000 tickets will be able to be sold.
They're playing it in the end zone, and the equivalent of the end zone on the right
that's
side.
That's what they always do. So again, things normal people don't think about, but sight lines in these domes change. You have an off shooting night. Purdue, if you line up man to man, they're not going to beat Houston. I think you got to take a chance on something, and if they can hit threes, then so be it.
I agree on the zone. Let me be abundantly clear. I agree that the zone, you have to try it, you have to throw it at them, etc. But the execution of what the result of it is what I was arguing.
No,
I'm arguing the fact that like they have to, even if they run zone at them, maybe it's a 3-2 where they completely try to push them off the line, because that Houston has shown like if you can kind of match them in some of the spots they feel comfortable, they kind of get weird. And it's like, again, they've only done that a handful of times. Auburn, we were freaking out about them earlier in the year. Alabama, same thing. San Diego State, all those teams were the more physical defensive team, except for maybe Alabama. I'd have to rewatch that one.
I'm curious now while we're talking about this, we'll bring this last game up while you guys are talking about Kentucky, Tennessee. I'm going to look up those losses. I'm curious what Houston, the attempts from 3 they had. Give me your guys' thoughts. Kentucky, Tennessee, round 3. Look, Lamont Butler, they've played 80 minutes so far. Lamont Butler only played like 17 of those 80 minutes. Kentucky won both games. They had role players step up in those games. DeRosa both times said, well, Tennessee's defense is so great at defending a 3. They're not going to be able to do this. They hit 12 threes in both games. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm looking this up because now I'm curious how many threes Houston took in all these games.
Yeah, I'll go first in this game. I'm going to be stubborn. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you again. Fool me 3 times, shame on you again. I'm going to take Tennessee for the exact reasons I laid out the other time. Do I have any good feel on this game? No, not at all. Not at all. This is the game I probably have the least good feel on. I think Tennessee's been the better team all year at this point. Lamont Butler's dealing with that shoulder injury. I think it could bite him. No Jackson Robinson. I don't have a great feel for this game. I think Tennessee can beat him inside. Amari Williams has been awesome in this tournament run, though. He has been spectacular. So, wouldn't stun me there, but I'm just going to be stubborn. That is my analysis. Is I'm just going to be stubborn. Tennessee's going to, if these teams played 3 times, you told me Tennessee got swept, I'd say, are you crazy? And look, I might look crazy. I got Tennessee.
No, it's simple for me. Why am I second guessing a team that's won the last 2 meetings? Like it's weird. Like this is the NCAA tournament. It's fun. The committee knows what they're doing, putting these 2 together in the 3-2 line. Like it's a weird.
In Indianapolis too.
They know what they're doing. Like it's the issue I'm running into is it really is like it's so cliche and it's so dumb, and yet there are instances that it happens. But it really is hard to beat a team 3 times. Like it's a real thing. Like I get it's cliche. I get it's brought up a ton. Whatever. It's hard to do that. It really is. And Tennessee arguably might be playing some of their best basketball in recent, I know they lost in the championship game, whatever, but they felt like a team that there was just not enough guys that bought into their role. I brought up the role thing earlier with another team. I think Tennessee, they're not like people are arguing that their offense is better. I'd have to look at A to B, comparison, whatever, but people are arguing their offense is better with Chaz Lanier. I don't know. Dalton Connect was pretty freaking cool. And so not having that obviously is a disadvantage, but it hasn't been their downfall lately. The offense has not been like this like big problem for Tennessee. Is they've been finding it in other ways. Lanier has been awesome. I do think that's something to note. And if Tennessee plays to me, if Tennessee plays a B- offensive game, they probably win by 5 or 6, just because Kentucky's defense has been really good lately. They're 45th. They're not the worst in this entire tournament. We've completely established that. That was something I hammered earlier with BYU. I just wonder if it comes down to the end, the team that isn't fully healthy, that is missing one of their best offensive players and passers in Jackson Robinson. I think that will ultimately end up mattering. And I think Ziegler's going to be that big of a difference because of that. And so I think I'm going to take Tennessee, but this is probably the game I'm the most reluctant about.
Look, I'm fully aware that Tennessee absolutely can win this game, and they're the betting favorite. They are a 4.5-point favorite according to ESPN. Here's the thing, though. Do you guys remember the second matchup, the one Lamont actually played some of the first half before getting hurt? The very first possession of the game. He's on Zakai Ziegler, steals the ball from him like it was nothing, goes down, lays it in. Kentucky's up 2-0. That whole half that he played, Zakai Ziegler didn't do jack shit. Anybody that Lamont Butler's on rarely does jack shit. And I think that's a huge thing, because if you can take Zakai Ziegler out the game, Tennessee's offense, we think they struggle at times. If Ziegler can't distribute the ball, they really struggle. The games, though, the 2 games, the best player on the floor for Tennessee in both of those games was Igor Milicic. He was able to find space from outside, get a shot off quick, hit 3 or 4 threes in both of those games. I think he's got to be big. Whatever the game plan is, Chaz Lanier just struggles against Kentucky. I don't know if stylistically, I don't know what it is. He has struggled in the previous 2 meetings, despite being pretty damn good the rest of the year. If Tennessee wins this game, I think it's got to be Lanier has to get going like he has all year, but it's got to be a guy like Jeremiah Mashack has to make plays, and he's simply just not in this game. Felix Okpara has been taken out of these games because what Amari Williams is able to do. I mean, 7 foot and be able to basically play point center is hard for any traditional center to defend. I just say, DeRosa, you'll understand this because we're both like combat sports. Styles make fights, and sometimes styles like how many Dagestanian wrestlers just come in and screw everybody up because they have one thing that they're really good at, whether you're a stand-up striker or you're a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they just punish you, right? Sometimes it's just like that in the game of basketball. Whatever reason is, I think Kentucky, matchup-wise, the way they shoot the ball frustrates Tennessee. I think they win. I think they get a clean sweep, then ultimately get beat by Houston in the Elite Eight because that's a different ball of wax. I just think it's a style thing, and maybe they don't hit 12 threes again. If they do, they're winning this game regardless. But I could see them hit 9 or 10 again. Kobe Brea dude, Kobe Brea, how do you defend him? We've said it all year. When he can change his shot fake you, it's crazy. So, look, I've got Kentucky. I know it's a complete homer pick, but that's a sincere pick as well from just an observer of it. I just think their style gives Tennessee problems, and I think they win this game. I do. I honestly do.
I think it does. And honestly, since I said my point earlier, a couple of things that I think have just kind of made me even second guess even further, which is bad. Tennessee's depth, I'm not particularly proud about in a close game down the stretch. I guess counterpoint to that to myself would be that I'm worried Kentucky would be able to get the stops they need in the final 2 minutes that ultimately would matter, because those other games weren't needed back then. They didn't need to do that. And so that's, with the unknown present, I'm picking Tennessee because I think they'll have the best player on the floor if he's on. Reluctantly saying that. And if it's close, look, there's teams that you mentioned, the 12 free, 10 threes, whatever. If you're not hitting those, I just have a hard time believing you're going to win this game.
I agree with that. I agree. That's why the thing with Kentucky, two last points, one negative, one positive, and we'll get out of here. The negative being turnovers. Tennessee did not turn us over in either of those games a whole terrible lot. If you can turn them over, as we've seen at the end of the Oklahoma game in the SEC tournament, with Alabama in the SEC tournament, you can get Kentucky in a bad spot and pretty much dominate them. If Tennessee can't turn them over, then I think they're in trouble. The other guy, too, who has stepped up for Kentucky in the last 3 weeks? I mean, really stepped up off the bench, hit a logo 3 yesterday against Illinois. Colin Chandler, 3-and-D dude, has been phenomenal here lately. I think it's a close game. I think Kentucky's able to just stylistically able to bury him from 3. Tennessee has a hard time playing from behind like that, and I think Kentucky wins. Anything before we get out of here, kind of wrapped up the Sweet 16? You guys got any shout-outs, bank on it, or anything before we get out of here today?
I have 2 shout-outs. I don't really have a bank on it because I think at this point it's just all these games are, even with the spreads, like they're just they're all technically tosses ups if we're being honest. Except for maybe Houston, Purdue. So the top 3 scorers on FAU's 2023 Final Four team are all in the Sweet 16 on 3 separate teams: John L. Davis, Arkansas; Flag Gold, Michigan; Elijah Martin, Florida. I don't really know who I'm shouting out. I think that's just kind of cool. Obviously, it's kind of the top end of the transfer portal where if it goes well, I think that's a really cool example of those guys deserve to go from FAU to somewhere and where they earned it, and they actually stepped up to the plate. So I kind of think I'm putting a bow on what we talked about earlier, that like the 15-minute mark was just, this is a great example of top 3 guys doing it well.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have a point? No, I go ahead. You have a point.
I was being an asshole. I cut you off. I apologize.
No. I if you have something on the FAU thing, I'd love to hear it. Okay. All right. Last thing, I got to shout out my guy, Anthony Delorso, man. They're in the Sweet 16 because he hit 4 straight free throws to win the game. They put him in constantly, and like, I love the guy to death. That's my guy, but man, traffic cone on defense sometimes. He knows that. He'll admit that. Stone feet. Like, they took him out. I love Lloyd. Lloyd might be one of the best guys at just subbing and like how quickly that can happen and the way he thinks about that stuff. I think that's actually a really big advantage for Tommy Lloyd. Maybe that's something that goes into play in their next game. I don't know. But they did a really good job of executing down the stretch and mitigating Caleb Love risk by keeping a guy that was a 90% free throw shooter in the game the way they did. It was really, really impressive the way they subbed Delia in and out. And for him to hit the 4 and then be in double figures, like, I'm really happy for the guy. He left Campbell for a reason, to play at Arizona, to play for national championships, and they're on their way to be doing that. So shout out to that guy.
I love it. I've got 2 real quick, DeRosa, if you've got any. Look, the SEC, after day 1 of the tournament.
Yeah, I forgot to bring this up earlier.
Yeah, after day 1 of the tournament, you had people claiming, the SEC is overrated.
Yes.
After day 1. How many teams do we again have from the SEC in the Sweet 16? Did we not set a record? 7 teams? Yeah. So I think the best conference that we've maybe ever seen lived up to the hype, just because maybe like Missouri and Mississippi State got beat. The best teams in that league, once they got the rolling, you see where they are now. So easy on the SEC's overrated. And the other one, I want to give a shout out to Tyrese Proctor. That dude has been phenomenal. 25 against Baylor, 19 against Mount St. Mary's, 19 against Louisville. He has been great this year. We kind of were hard on him his first 2 years in college, but as a junior, man, he has tuck over this team in the absence of losing Jeremy Roach, tuck over his starting point guard, and it's been great, finally living up to the hype. And you got to feel good for a kid like that. He's been just damn good this year.
Yeah, I got a couple, but usually when you make like the general points on like conferences and stuff on the SEC in this case, it's like I think he's like, you're talking like to the dumbest people. No, I was in group chats where they made that exact point after day 1, and I'm like, you guys are idiots. And then the SEC beat 3 Big East teams and ended the Big East season. So it's like, you guys are still idiots. That was such a stupid point people were making. You guys are just morons.
I love how you're narrowing down which group chat this was. Just by like I'm
going to be talking to one of the guys who made that point on the Road to the Garden podcast, which we are recording in under an hour at least. Yeah. So
I love the plug. It was like, hey, by the way,
so that'll be one of our conversations. The other one will be on Sean Miller. But 2 shout outs. One, Bennett Sturts. I thought he was masterful, and I don't want his performance to get forgotten. He was so good. I'm very excited. I'm very glad he has another year because I want to watch Bennett Sturts play for another year. He is a guy I want to make a point to watch at least 10 times next year.
His performance ideally won't get forgotten, by the way, because he'll do it again when Iowa makes the tournament next year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
it'll happen again. I mean, just let's be real.
Well, and I hope it does. I'm very excited. I really, really love watching him play.
Same.
And 2, you guys, this is the Sweet 16 show, right?
Yeah.
That's what we spoke about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't we talk about the real Sweet 16 of the college basketball crown coming up March 31st?
My
I gotta
You
go.
want to watch
my
real
God.
basketball Monday, March 31st at 3 p.m. You get to watch Butler versus Utah. Are you kidding me? That's the real Sweet
My
16 that
God.
the people should be talking about. Shout out the crown.
Somebody get
Utah might have like legit 4 guys on the roster by that game. Like,
you know how I know that
Yeah.
Fox Sports got to you is because you just plugged the damn crown on this show. So
I have
shout
one
out.
more. I have one more. I forgot. I have one more,
Go
and you'll
I
appreciate
really
this.
hope
This is
Fox
for you.
pays me for all the crown plugs I've done over the year, by the way.
No,
Like,
you deserve them because it's shameful stuff. Kentucky beating Illinois locked in 25% of the Sweet 16 being occupied by first-year coaches at schools that did not win an NCAA tournament game and or missed a March Madness altogether a year ago. Those include John Calipari, Mark Pope, Kevin Young, which again that love triangle, and then Dusty May.
Yeah, that's crazy. How about a win-win-win for 3 programs? The best 3-way trade we've ever seen in sports, probably. I mean, that's insane that BYU, Kentucky, and Arkansas all win a trade of coaches. Incredible guys that we are here for this week of Sweet 16 games, Elite 8. When we come back at you, we will have a Final Four set. We will know the Final Four teams that will be set to play for our 2025 national champion. Best time of year. It's coming up here, starting again on Thursday, rolling all the way through Sunday with Sweet 16 Elite 8 action. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Send a follow, leave a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Tell your people to tell their people about us. We are the best thing going in college basketball today. We appreciate you guys, and until next week where we'll talk Final Four action and beyond, we will catch you guys down the road. Peace.